Chapter 2152. 5 Steps in the Void. Skyzhuan immediately perked up. Looking at Old Man Wu Qing, he asked, "What method?" Old Man Wu Qing grinned and said, "I will extract the heavenly Tao principles from the heavenly Tao blood, and you will be able to absorb the heavenly Tao blood's energy. This old man can see that you have already reached the peak of the 4th step in the Void Sky realm. If you can absorb a drop of the heavenly Tao blood's energy, breaking through to the 5th step should be more than enough." Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He knew that this old man Wu Qing wouldn't think for him. Sure enough, he was aiming for the heavenly Tao principles in the heavenly Tao blood. A drop of heavenly Tao blood shouldn't be much to you, right? After all, you have the heavenly Tao blood left behind by the Luotian. Moreover, you have 2 drops of heavenly Tao blood from the fire Qilin. Old man Wu Qing continued fanning the flames. Zhuowen pondered for a moment, then nodded. "All right." Old man Wu Qing revealed a happy smile and said, "Haha, that's right. This old man will definitely help you break through to the 5th step in the Void Sky realm." Looking at old man Wu Qing's smile, Zhuowen felt as if he had boarded a pirate ship. "Old man, according to what you said, can I absorb a few more drops of heavenly Tao blood?" Zhuowen suddenly asked. Old man Wu Qing sneered and said, "If you don't want to die, you can absorb a few more drops. Under the 8th step in the Void Sky realm, absorbing 1 drop is already dangerous. If you absorb too much, it's simply courting death. If you want to die, you can try." Zhuowen's eyes turned cold. Then, he smiled embarrassedly and said, "Forget it." The fire Qilin disappeared, and Devour returned to his human form, landing not far from Zhuowen. The Heavenly Demon Island's defensive array was also retracted. Magatama brought the Mara to Zhuowen's side, sizing up the black-clothed Zhuowen behind him and said, "Zhuo Xiaoyu, is this clone of yours Devour?" Zhuowen wasn't surprised that Magatama recognized Devour. He admitted it openly. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, you're really lucky. Devour is a strong race in the Starry Sky, a race that surpasses the Starry Sky giant beasts. Their innate talents are much stronger than the human clan. I didn't expect you to have such a clone. Awesome." Mara couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Zhuowen scratched his head and smiled, "I'm lucky. Since Devour was still a child, I succeeded in seizing his body." Magatama and Mara nodded. They all knew that Devour's god soul was much stronger than the human clans. It was impossible for Zhuowen to possess Devour's body. However, it was much more reasonable to take over the body of an infant. Zhuo Wen, Mo Tian, and the others discussed for a while, and they even talked about Ling Binbing's information. After finding out that Ling Binbing had already contacted the remaining 7 of the 10 great sects, Zhuo Wen's eyes turned even colder. Of course, which of the 7 sects that Ling Binbing contacted would send a crusade against Zhuo Wen? The scouts that Mo Tian sent out didn't find out any specific information. According to Magatama's estimation, Ling Binbing would bring the ancestors of the other sects here in 1 or 2 months. Of course, Magatama had tampered with the ancient teleport formation in the Heavenly Demon Island. The ancient teleport formations in other places couldn't be used here. They could only use the spaceships. Thus, Zhuowen still had 1 or 2 months. During this time, I'd better reach the 5th virtual sky realm. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes, then looked at Old Ruthless. The latter nodded in understanding. In a dark room with a blue light, Zhuowen sat cross-legged on a lotus seat. A drop of blue blood floated above his right palm. "Old man, help me extract the heavenly Tao's principle from the heavenly Tao blood." Zhuowen looked at the dwarf old man, who was shorter than him. "Got it. Extracting the heavenly Tao's principle requires extreme care. I'm afraid it will take a month. While I'm extracting the heavenly Tao's principle, you can absorb the heavenly Tao blood that has lost its heavenly Tao's principle." Old Ruthless said indifferently. Then, he formed a seal with both hands. An invisible force appeared in the surroundings. Instantly, the drop of heavenly Tao blood in Zhuowen's palm flew up into the air, floating quietly. Then, 5 blue rays of light shot out from the 5 fingers of Old Ruthless' right hand. They circled around the blue drop of blood, forming strange and unpredictable patterns. Immediately after, Zhuowen discovered that the power of law contained in the drop of blood was like the outer shell of corn. It slowly peeled off and adhered to the surface of the patterns formed by the blue rays of light. However, this kind of power of law was too fine. It was probably less than 1/10,000th of the power of law in the drop of blood. Old Ruthless' expression was focused as he patiently extracted the power of law from the heavenly Tao blood. Moreover, every time he extracted the power of law, he would filter out that portion of the heavenly Tao blood and give it to Zhuowen. Zhuowen looked at the blue blood that was only 1/10,000th of the drop of blood in front of him. After hesitating for a moment, he absorbed it into his body. A rumble rang out in Zhuowen's head. Then, Zhuowen felt all the blood in his body move. An unprecedentedly powerful energy filled his limbs and bones, causing all the hairs on his body to stand on end. What powerful energy! Just 1/10,000th of the heavenly Tao blood actually has such powerful energy. It looks like old Ruthless didn't lie to me. If I completely absorb that drop of heavenly Tao blood, the abundant energy will be enough for me to reach the 5th step of the illusory sky realm, Zhuowen thought joyfully. Time slowly passed. A month passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, a blazing purple light erupted from Zhuowen's room. Then, a gigantic illusory sky bridge appeared in the sky above the pavilion that Zhuowen was in. Someone's about to break through. Many cultivators on Heavenly Devil Island noticed the illusory sky bridge that stretched across the horizon, and they revealed astonished expressions. The reason for this was because they felt that this illusory sky bridge was a little too big, and it was more than a few times larger than an ordinary illusory sky bridge. That's Brother Zhuo's illusory sky bridge. It looks like Brother Zhuo is about to reach the 5th step of the illusory sky realm. It's so fast. Mo Fan raised his head and recognized that the illusory sky bridge was in the direction of Zhuowen's pavilion. He couldn't help but feel shocked. Senior brother, let's go and take a look together. A beautiful figure flashed across the sky above Mo Fan's cave. Mo Fan quickly chased after her and said, Junior sister Yushan, wait for me. Di Ling, Zhong Zicheng, and the others, as well as Magatama and Mo Ji, were all alarmed by the illusory sky bridge. They all rushed toward the pavilion that Zhuowen was in. Zhuowen flew out of the pavilion and stepped onto the illusory sky bridge. He walked up step by step and finally stopped at the 4th step. 5th step of the illusory sky realm, creating all things. Zhuowen's gaze landed on the 5th step. It was said that cultivators who reached the 5th step of the illusory sky realm had the power to create all things. It was as if they were the creator of the world. However, there was a huge difference between the creator of the world and the real creator of the world. The real creator of the world could create something out of nothing. On the other hand, cultivators who reached the 5th step of the illusory sky realm could only create simple life forms. They couldn't create humans or space beasts at all. Of course, cultivators who reached the 5th step of the illusory sky realm could create a pseudo-life planet. However, it was slightly weaker than a real-life planet. The humans inside it couldn't cultivate at all. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with confidence. He took a step forward and stepped onto the 5th step, completely lighting up the dim 5th step. Chapter 2153. The wind blows before the storm such powerful strength. He just advanced to the 5th step of the void sky realm, and the aura he is revealing isn't any weaker than the 7th step of the void sky realm. He is truly a freak. Mo Tian muttered with a fearful gaze. This should be related to the fact that his doppelganger is Devour. After all, his doppelganger should have subtly influenced his original body, making his original body much stronger than ordinary cultivators, Moji said. Magatama nodded. Just as he was about to speak, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Old ancestor, what's wrong? Moji noticed that Magatama's expression was strange and asked. The scouts at the border sent news that Ling Binbing has returned. It is said that 6 sects have come with him this time, Magatama said in a deep voice. 6 sects. It seems that all the other sects have come except for Half Moon Hall? Moji's expression changed slightly. Open the defensive array, Magatama said and made a hand seal, ordering the disciples of the sect to preside over the defensive array. Zhuowen also noticed the abnormality. He put away the illusory heavenly bridge and flew towards Magatama, asking, "Senior, what happened?" "Ling Binbing has returned. Besides Half Moon Hall, the other 6 sects have also sent people. I'm afraid this matter is going to be a little tricky," Magatama said in a deep voice. Zhuoan narrowed his eyes and sneered in his heart. In fact, he had long known that apart from Half Moon Hall and Heavenly Demon Island, the other 8 sects would target him. He had already destroyed the Dark Illusion sect and High Heaven sect on his trip to Dongyu, but he still could not intimidate the remaining 6 sects. So, don't blame him, Zhuoan, for being ruthless. Zhuo Xiaoyu, I think you should run away first. Although not all the old ancestors of the 6 sects have come, according to the news from the scouts, at least 3 old ancestors have been persuaded by Ling Binbing to come, Magatama advised. Which 3? Zhuoan asked. Magatama shook his head and said, I'm not sure. Zhuoan pondered for a moment and said, Senior, I plan to stay here first. I need to know which 3 ancestors stayed behind so that my next plan can be carried out successfully. Magatama shook his head helplessly and said, This is too risky. In fact, you can completely escape the starfield. There's no need to fight with those sects head-on. After all, the forces by your side are not small. None of the 10 great sects can take you down. However, Zhuowen shook his head and said, Senior, in my hometown, there is a common saying. When you face a ferocious beast that is stronger than you, you cannot retreat. The more you retreat, the more the ferocious beast will take advantage of you. In the end, it will attack you endlessly. Magatama was stunned. What Zhuoan said was not unreasonable, and he had nothing to say. They are here. Magatama raised his head and noticed several streams of light in the distance and sighed softly. He knew that it was too late for Zhuoan to leave now. However, Zhuoan was not depressed at all. Instead, he looked at the streams of light that stopped outside Heavenly Demon Island's starry sky with bright eyes. These were 6 extremely huge airships, each of which was dozens of times larger than the divine armament Zhuoan obtained in the past. Universe Sect, Void Cleansing Peak, Demon Pearl Sect, Qi Refining Sword Sect, White Jade Pavilion, and Flower Butterfly Valley. Zhuoan looked at the symbols on the 6 airships and read out the names of the forces they belonged to word by word, his voice low and filled with killing intent. From the 6 airships, more than a dozen figures walked out, 4 of them standing at the front. One of them was not unfamiliar to Zhuoan, it was High Heaven Sect's old ancestor, Ling Binbing. The other 3 figures were 2 men and a woman. One of them was a white-haired Taoist priest, one of them was a middle-aged man with golden eyes, and the last one was a beautiful young woman who wore a dress with a dancing butterfly pattern. Although Zhuoan did not know these 3 people, he could guess their identities at a glance. The white-haired Taoist priest should be Void Cleansing Peak's old ancestor, Fu Yu's. The middle-aged man with golden eyes should be Universe Sect's old ancestor, Chen Changxing, and the beautiful young woman should be Demon Pearl Sect's old ancestor, Yang Zhonghui. The reason Zhuoan could guess their identities was naturally because the 3 people standing behind them were Void Cleansing Peak's sect master, Fu Feipeng, Universe Sect's sect master, Chen Yongzhong, and Demon Pearl Sect's sect master, Yang Mu Qiu. That bitch Yang Mu Qiu actually has the face to come to Heavenly Demon Island. Moji's eyes were gloomy as he looked at Yang Mu Qiu standing behind Yang Zhonghui. Back then, their Heavenly Demon Island's demonic Tao scripture was stolen because of Yang Mu Qiu. Moreover, Yang Mu Qiu had also deceived Moji's feelings. It could be said that Moji's hatred for Yang Mu Qiu was extremely deep. Yang Mu Qiu obviously saw Moji's hostility and a hint of disdain appeared at the corner of her mouth, but she did not pay much attention to him. Fu Yu's, Chen Changxing, and Yang Zhonghui all looked at Ling Binbing. Ling Binbing nodded knowingly and slowly walked out. He saw Zhuoan next to Magatama at a glance and said coldly, Brother Magatama, you protected a thief and destroyed my High Heaven sect. Do you know your crime? No, my ass. Ling Binbing, who do you think you are? Do you have the right to judge me? If you're not convinced, come over here and let's spar. Mo Tian unexpectedly burst out with vulgarities, which caused Ling Binbing's expression to turn unsightly and ashen from anger. You've got guts. Today, the 6 great sects are all here. If your Heavenly Demon Island doesn't want to be destroyed, you'd better hand over Zhuoan. Ling Binbing left behind a ruthless statement, but he didn't rush up to fight with Mo Tian. Although Ling Binbing and Magatama were both cultivators at the 8 Steps Void Heaven realm, Ling Binbing admitted that he was no match for Magatama, who was a demonic cultivator, in a real fight. Just a coward. Devil Sky snorted coldly with disdain, and then he looked at Fu Yu's group of 3 and said, "The 3 of you are the ancestors of a sect at any rate. Are you willing to listen to the orders of this trash, Ling Binbing?" Ling Binbing was so angry that he roared, "Magatama, don't go too far. Ayo, don't be so angry, you too." Yang Zhonghui suddenly laughed and broke the deadlock. "Actually, we didn't come here to cause trouble for your heavenly demon island. As long as Big Brother Magatama hands over Zhuoan, we will immediately withdraw. As for the grievances between your sect and High Heaven sect, we will definitely not interfere. Junior Sister Yang is right. The grievances between your sects have nothing to do with us. We only want Zhuoan," Chen Changsheng said with a smile. Fu Yu's was a man of few words, nodding and saying, "Hand over Zhuoan." Ling Binbing's face was filled with embarrassment and anger. When he went to their sects to lobby them, these 3 people smiled at him and promised to help him seek justice. Now that they were on Heavenly Demon Island, they immediately forgot about their promise to him. How could Ling Binbing not be angry? But no matter how unhappy Ling Binbing was, he didn't dare to say anything. He was now all alone. High Heaven sect had been destroyed and he was now at odds with Heavenly Demon Island. If he angered the 3 people beside him, he would really have no place in the starfield in the future. Magatama frowned slightly and couldn't help but look at Zhuoan beside him, obviously letting Zhuoan make the decision. "Senior, let me handle the rest." Saying so, Zhuoan took the lead and stood at the edge of the protective array. He looked at the higher-ups of the 6 great sects and said, "Your Grandpa Zhuo is here. If you have the guts, come and bite me." Chapter 2154. Duel. The upper echelons of the 6 great sects all had ugly expressions. They looked at Zhuoan as if they were looking at an idiot. "Zhuoan, do you think you're invincible just because you have an 8th-step Void Heaven expert backing you?" Chen Changsheng laughed out of extreme anger. Yang Zhonghui laughed, "Although there's nothing wrong with being young and impetuous, you're just an ant. Do you really think you have the right to be arrogant in front of us?" Fu Yu's only looked at Zhuoan with a cold smile. Although he didn't say a word, the disdain in his eyes was extremely obvious. "Little bastard, all you can do is bark like a pitiful dog within Heavenly Demon Island's protective array. If you have the guts, then come out. Don't accidentally drag Heavenly Demon Island down with you," Ling Binbing said in an eccentric tone. Many disciples of the Heavenly Devil Island revealed strange expressions. They looked at Magatama and Mara in confusion. Some of them even muttered softly that they shouldn't have let Zhuoan enter the Heavenly Devil Island. Zhuoan knew that Ling Binbing was trying to drive a wedge between him and the Heavenly Devil Island. However, he didn't plan to stay on the Heavenly Devil Island in the first place. "Old bastard, I, Zhuoan, am about to come out and take your dog life. Are you willing to duel with me?" Unexpectedly, not only did Zhuoan not shrink back, he actually raised the condition of fighting Ling Binbing one-on-one. The surroundings were in an uproar as all of them felt that Zhuoan was too arrogant and conceited, and it was even to the extent that he was courting death. Ling Binbing was also stunned. He clearly didn't expect Zhuoan to actually come out and fight him alone. What was the difference between this and suicide? "Old dog, you don't dare." Zhuoan's indifferent voice sounded again, interrupting Ling Binbing's wild thoughts. "Since you're courting death, I'll fulfill your wish. Then get out here right now," Ling Binbing sneered. However, Zhuoan didn't move. He said, "You have so many people around you. Who can guarantee that they won't attack when I come out?" "I promise," Ling Binbing replied. "What's the use of your guarantee? You want to fight me one-on-one? Sure, but those fellows beside you had better stay far away. Also, you have to swear to the Heavenly Tao that there will not be a second person interfering with our battle," Zhuoan said. Ling Binbing frowned slightly. Soon after, he looked towards Chen Changsheng and the other 2 beside him. Clearly, he was seeking their opinions. Chen Changsheng sneered, "You want us to stay away, then what about your servants?" I heard from Sect Master Ling that you have a servant who is also a Void Sky 8 steps expert. If your servant interferes when you two are fighting, wouldn't it be very unfair? Zhuowen smiled and sent a message to the King Spirit. The King Spirit then flew behind Zhuowen. He is my servant, the King Spirit. His cultivation has reached the Void Sky 8 steps. When I fight with old Dogling, he will also keep a safe distance from me. Also, what is this old Dogling's cultivation and what is my cultivation? Why is he so cautious? Is he afraid of me? Zhuowen boasted shamelessly. Ling Binbing was furious in his heart when he heard Zhuowen call him an old dog. He said, "Little bastard, I only need one move to kill you. Even if this servant of yours is by your side, I will still be able to kill you. If you wish to seek death, why don't you come out now?" Zhuowen sneered and ignored Ling Binbing. Instead, he looked at Chen Changsheng and the other two and said, "The three of you, although I have a servant who is at the Void Sky 8 steps, compared to your 6 great sects, the gap is still too big. You came here just for the heavenly star essence on me, right? I still have a lot of it. The three of you came all the way here, so please take it as a gift from me." After saying that, Zhuowen threw out 3 jade bottles. Chen Changsheng took them and opened the corks. He found that there were 5 drops of heavenly star essence inside. He nodded and his expression eased a lot. "Little friend Zhuo, I will gladly accept this gift, but I heard that you have more heavenly domain starry sky essence than this, right?" Chen Changsheng put away the jade bottle and asked shamelessly. Zhuowen's eyes became colder and colder. He cupped his hands and said, "Of course, I still have a lot of reserves. It's just that there is a big grudge between me and this old Dogling. I want to solve the grudge between me and him first, then I will give you the rest of the heavenly star essence. It's just that I am not happy to see this old dog's face." So, Ling Binbing was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Zhuowen was really ruthless. "You three, don't listen to this little bastard's nonsense. He must be stalling for time. Maybe he is plotting something," Ling Binbing hurriedly explained, but he was interrupted by Yang Zhonghui. Yang Zhonghui smiled and said, "I think this little brother is very good at dealing with people. Let's wait until the grudge between him and Brother Ling is solved first. Anyway, I have plenty of time. Okay, a person should have a clear mind. The matter of the heavenly star essence is not urgent. Zhuo Xiaoyu can solve the grudge first." Chen Changsheng laughed. Fu Yuz nodded and did not say anything. "Then thank you very much. This is the territory of the Heavenly Demon Island, so it is not suitable for a battle. Otherwise, it will disturb the cultivators of the Heavenly Demon Island. How about this? Let's go to the ruins of the Serene Illusion sect. It is much more spacious there." Zhuowen grinned. Chen Changsheng and the other two naturally had no objection, but Ling Binbing was so angry that his face turned ashen. Ling Binbing felt very uncomfortable, especially when he saw how quickly Chen Changsheng and the other two changed their faces. Magatama narrowed his eyes and glanced at Zhuowen, revealing a thoughtful expression. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, I'll go with you." Magatama rushed to Zhuowen's side and said. Zhuowen shook his head and transmitted his voice to Magatama. "Senior, I think you have also guessed my next plan. I will take my leave now." With that, Zhuowen led Di Ling, Old Man Qing, and the others into the flying ship, turning into a streak of light and disappearing from the Heavenly Demon Island. Meanwhile, Ling Binbing, Chen Changsheng, and the other two led the upper echelons of the 6 great sects and followed closely behind Zhuowen's flying ship, afraid that Zhuowen would do something to escape. While Zhuowen and the others were on their way to the Dark Mirage sect, many cultivators in the Eastern Universe had learned of the duel between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing. Cultivators from all over the Eastern Universe had made their way to the old site of the Dark Mirage sect. Several days later, Zhuowen's group arrived at the former site of the Serene Illusion sect. At this moment, the Serene Illusion sect no longer possessed its former prosperity and liveliness. Replacing it was a desolate land filled with weeds. Even many of the smaller organizations around the Serene Illusion sect had moved away due to the disappearance of the Serene Illusion sect. It could be said that the planet where the Serene Illusion sect resided had completely become a dead zone. However, As the news of the battle between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing spread, the dead continent finally gained some life. Many cultivators hurried to the continent long ago and set up camp, waiting for the arrival of Zhuowen and Ling Binbing's group. "They're here. That's Zhuowen's flying ship. I've seen it before. There are 6 other flying ships behind it. They belong to the Cosmic Sect, the Void Rush Peak, and the other sects that have come to the Eastern Universe this time." Chapter 2155. Fighting an 8 steps void sky. The flying ship stopped above the ruins of the Dark Illusion sect, and Zhuowen led Di Ling, Old Man Wu Qing, and the others off the flying ship. The flying ship of the 6 great sects also stopped near Zhuowen in the next second, and Ling Binbing, Chen Changxing, Yang Zhonghui, and Fu Yu's led a dozen or so higher-ups down. "Zhuo Xiaoyu, I hope you are a man of your word. After you settle your grudge with Sect Master Ling, you'd better obediently hand over the heavenly domain star essence," Chen Changxing said with a fake smile. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's also looked coldly at Zhuowen. As far as the 3 of them were concerned, Zhuowen would undoubtedly die in this one-on-one battle. Although these words were meant for Zhuowen, they were actually also meant for Ling Binbing. If Zhuowen died, his spirit ring would definitely be taken by Ling Binbing, so the 3 of them were mainly on guard against Ling Binbing escaping with the treasure. Zhuowen didn't reply at all. From the expressions of Chen Changsheng and the other 2, he could tell that they didn't take him seriously at all. Or it could be said that as far as they were concerned, he, Zhuowen, would definitely lose this one-on-one battle. The reason why Zhuowen proposed this duel was mainly to test how strong he was now, and whether he had the strength to fight an 8 steps void sky cultivator. Ling Binbing grinned and took a step forward, leaping into the sky above the Dark Illusion sect, looking down at Zhuowen and saying, "Little bastard, come up and die. It's the ancestor of High Heaven sect, Ling Binbing. It seems that the rumors are true. Zhuowen and Ling Binbing are really planning to duel. Is this Zhuowen seeking death? Looking at his aura, he is only at the 5th step void sky, but he dares to challenge an 8th step void sky ancestor? Who knows? Perhaps he really is courting death. There is no suspense in this battle. This Zhuowen will definitely end tragically." Discussions broke out all around. Many of the cultivators who had rushed here looked back and forth between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing. Most of them felt that Zhuowen was courting death. Zhuowen raised his head. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well as he said, "Bastard, who are you calling?" "The bastard is calling you," Ling Binbing said subconsciously. Zhuowen replied with a smile, "Oh, so it's the bastard calling me." As soon as he said this, Ling Binbing realized that something was wrong. This Zhuowen was indirectly calling him a bastard. "You have a sharp tongue, but only know how to move your mouth. Now that we're at the Dark Mirage sect, you don't dare to come out and fight." Ling Binbing calmed down and mocked. "On the contrary, I plan to take your dog life today." Zhuowen took a step forward and leaped not far in front of Ling Binbing. "Hee. Then you can die." Ling Binbing grinned, his eyes filled with killing intent as he locked onto Zhuowen. Just as he was about to charge at Zhuowen, he was stopped by Zhuowen. "What's wrong? Do you regret fighting with me?" Ling Binbing said coldly. However, Zhuowen ignored Ling Binbing and looked at Chen Yongxing and the others nearby. "Seniors, can you stay 1,000,000 kilometers away from here?" Chen Yongxing and the others exchanged glances and discussed for a while before nodding. They kept their promise and retreated 1,000,000 kilometers away. "Tell your men to retreat as well," Ling Binbing said. Zhuowen gestured to the Emperor Spirit. The Emperor Spirit followed Old Man Wu Qing and the others and retreated 1,000,000 kilometers away, silently watching the battle that was about to take place above the Dark Mirage sect. "Hehe, I'll finish you in one move." At this moment, Ling Binbing did not have any worries. He released his killing intent completely and charged at Zhuowen like a ferocious beast. Before the person arrived, the fist was already a step ahead. Ling Binbing was worthy of being called an 8th step void sky expert. His fist energy condensed into an incomparably huge lightning domain. The terrifying lightning tribulation of the immortal world rumbled as it struck down. Each bolt was as thick as a giant dragon. As expected of an expert of the 8 steps void sky. This fist is so terrifying. That's the power of the thunder punishment of the immortal world. Any one of the thunderbolts can consign me to eternal damnation. Many of the onlooking cultivators looked at the shocking scene in the sky. Their hearts trembled, and their pupils shrank to the size of needles. They were even more in awe of Ling Binbing. Zhuowen grasped the void with his right hand, and the glorious purple galaxy sword appeared in his hand. He slashed out with the sword, and the void distorted and trembled, almost collapsing. The sword light turned into a huge illusory domain, which was no smaller than the thunder punishment of the immortal world. This move was the sixth move of the Tao of Destruction sword art, the heavenly Tao domain. It had a powerful force that could uproot mountains. Boom! Boom! The thunder punishment of the immortal world was very powerful. The heavenly Tao domain only lasted for 3 breaths of time before it completely dissipated. Zhuowen was not afraid at all. He grabbed the void with his left hand, and dense purple energy gushed out, condensing into a slender purple sword. With the 2 swords in hand, Zhuowen's entire body was like a spinning top as he continuously danced in the air. The 2 swords were like water ripples as they followed Zhuowen's movements. Beams of sword light shot out from the 2 swords, shattering the lightning bolts one after another. When Zhuowen destroyed the last thunderbolt, the thunder punishment of the immortal world completely collapsed, and Ling Binbing's fist energy also completely disappeared. He blocked it. This Zhuowen is very strong. He's only at the 5 steps Void Sky Realm, but he actually blocked the attack of the 8 steps Void Sky Realm. Everyone looked at the white-clothed youth and couldn't help but discuss. We've underestimated this kid. No wonder he dared to challenge Ling Binbing. It turns out that he's this strong. Millions of miles away, Chen Changsheng frowned slightly. He was slightly surprised that Zhuowen could actually block Ling Binbing's fist. This kid is indeed a little unusual. However, the gap between the 5 steps Void Sky Realm and the 8 steps Void Sky Realm is very big. Moreover, Ling Binbing just casually attacked. If Ling Binbing was serious, Zhuowen would have already fallen. Yang Zhonghui smiled. Fu Yuz, who was silent, spoke for the first time. Let's discuss how to distribute the heavenly domain starry sky essence. Zhuowen is definitely going to die. Even if he doesn't die, I don't plan to let him live. However, that old man Ling Binbing might have some devious ideas. Yang Zhonghui and Chen Changsheng both revealed serious expressions. Yang Zhonghui said, "Be wary of Ling Binbing. After Zhuowen is killed by Ling Binbing, we'll immediately act and seal off the surroundings to prevent Ling Binbing from escaping. With the strength of the 3 of us, Ling Binbing won't dare to escape alone." Brother Yang's words are reasonable. Ling Binbing's strength isn't considered strong among the old ancestors of the 8 great sects, and he doesn't have a secondary heaven-shattering divine artifact. How can he compare to us? If he wants to take it all for himself, he's just courting death. Yang Zhonghui sneered. I hope Ling Binbing can be a little smarter. Fu Yuz nodded and said solemnly. Look, Ling Binbing should be getting serious. This Zhuowen shouldn't be able to live for much longer. Yang Zhonghui suddenly said. Fu Yuz and Chen Changsheng both looked up. They saw that in the sky above the Serene Illusion sect, the moment Zhuowen broke Ling Binbing's fist, Ling Binbing attacked again. Chapter 2156. Real God of Thunder and Fire. Ling Binbing instantly appeared in front of Zhuowen and swung the awl in his right hand mercilessly. The awl streaked across the void and formed dense green lightning arcs. Zhuowen raised the glorious purple galaxy sword in his right hand to block the green lightning awl. Boom! However, the moment the divine sword and the awl collided, Zhuowen was surprised to find that the dense green lightning on the surface of the awl was like maggots that followed the glorious purple galaxy sword and entered Zhuowen's body. The green lightning was extremely terrifying. After entering Zhuowen's body, it went straight into his spiritual space and tried to destroy his spiritual soul. Zhuowen's spiritual soul was extremely strong. The moment the green lightning entered his spiritual space, it was annihilated by his powerful spiritual soul. Ling Binbing also noticed that Zhuowen's expression did not change and was surprised. The green lightning on his awl was not ordinary. It was a strange lightning that targeted the spiritual soul. Most of the cultivators who fought with him for the first time would be caught off guard and their spiritual soul would be struck by the green lightning, revealing a painful expression. However, Zhuowen was expressionless, as if the green lightning did not affect him at all. Boom! Boom! Ling Binbing snorted and swung the green lightning all at Zhuowen at an extremely fast speed. The terrifying green lightning surrounded the two of them, blurring their figures. Zhuowen kept retreating and was completely at a disadvantage. Die! Ling Binbing's right hand tightened and the green lightning all smashed down. The green lightning reached the sky and turned into a lightning pillar, blocking Ling Binbing's back. Ling Binbing used almost all of his strength in this attack and smashed heavily on the glorious purple galaxy sword. Poochie! Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood. He was shocked to find that the glorious purple galaxy sword in his hand could not withstand this attack and was completely shattered. You're finished. Seeing the glorious purple galaxy sword in Zhuowen's hand shattering, Ling Binbing became even more proud. He raised the green lightning all again and smashed it down. This attack was even more terrifying than the previous one. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes. He waved his right hand and took out the king's sword. Holding it, he also smashed it on the green lightning all. Boom! A gust of wind rose between the two of them. The stars in the surrounding starry sky moved like a dream and colorful light appeared. He blocked it. This guy! Ling Binbing's Binbing his god sword art editor, Transen green his art of green lightning all and swept it towards Zhuowen's chest. Zhuowen took several steps back and stabbed his imperial sword into the ground. He performed a series of hand seals and beams of sword light poured out from his back. More than 9,000 ancient swords shot out again, heading straight for Ling Binbing. Ling Binbing's pupils constricted. He brandished the azure thunder all to block the attacks of the swords as he retreated. Green lightning galaxy! Ling Binbing let out a low roar, and the green lightning all in his hand suddenly scattered out. Terrifying green lightning actually swept out like raindrops, and each of the green lightning bolts manifested into an incomparably huge green lightning star. The densely packed green lightning planets actually formed a small galaxy that revolved around Ling Binbing, blocking the attacks of the swords. However, when Ling Binbing used the green lightning galaxy, an ominous feeling rose in his heart. Whoosh! Suddenly, two divine swords flew out from beneath Ling Binbing's feet. One of the two swords was suffused with black lightning while the other was surging with purple flames. They were both filled with a dense and powerful aura. The two swords were extremely fast. They stabbed towards Ling Binbing's feet, as if they wanted to pierce through Ling Binbing's entire body. Extreme Dao Fire Sword and Extreme Dao Thunder Sword. Ling Binbing's pupils shrank. His feet moved in a profound manner as he hurriedly dodged. However, he had a bad feeling in his heart. He knew clearly that only real god Lei Hua could unleash the two extreme Dao divine swords at the same time. The so-called real god Lei Hua was a powerful real god who had obtained the two extreme energies of extreme Dao Fire and extreme Dao Thunder at the same time. Legend had it that a real god who had achieved 3 extreme Dao realms had a powerful strength comparable to Void Sky 9 steps. However, a real god who had achieved 3 extreme Dao realms had never appeared before. However, a real god Lei Hua had appeared, and this person was Purple Star Monarch. After Purple Star Monarch became a real god Lei Hua, his fighting strength was heaven-defying. He was actually not weaker than Void Sky 8 steps. He was a figure that the top 10 sects were extremely wary of. However, now, Ling Binbing actually saw the two extreme energies of Extreme Dao Fire Sword and Extreme Dao Thunder Sword again. Other than Purple Star Monarch, who else in the Great Brahma Sky Domain had reached the level of real god Lei Hua? Just as Ling Binbing's thoughts were running wild, a palm silently appeared behind Ling Binbing. Then, a palm suddenly blasted out. Ling Binbing's expression changed slightly. Without even looking back, he threw the green lightning all in his hand behind him. Rumble. The green lightning exploded. The palm actually took the green lightning all head-on without dodging. Dang. 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 Ling Binbing's expression changed slightly. He only felt an extremely vast force bombarding the green lightning all. Then, his right hand became extremely numb. He couldn't help but retreat continuously. Only then did he see the true face of the cultivator who had sneaked an attack on him. The person who had appeared in front of him was a man who was shrouded in demonic fog. Ling Binbing took a closer look and realized that the man's face was 90% similar to Zhuowen's. Rumor has it that Zhuowen has a doppelganger. Could this guy be that guy's doppelganger? That's impossible. This guy's doppelganger is actually the real god Lei Hua. As Ling Binbing retreated, he waved the green lightning all in his hand. The surrounding green lightning stars that were densely packed shot towards the black-clothed Zhuowen. The black-clothed Zhuowen held the supreme fire sword in his right hand and the supreme thunder sword in his left. With a twist of his waist, he shot forward like a whirlwind. The Lei Hua swords in his hands spun rapidly as his body spun. The light of thunder and fire exploded with a frightening brilliance as he spun. All the green lightning stars that shot towards him were actually blown to smithereens. Damn it. This guy has hidden himself really well. Ling Binbing's expression changed slightly. With a roar, he raised his aura to the peak. Then, the green lightning all blasted out without holding back. Bolts of green lightning appeared around Ling Binbing like pillars, making him seem like the reincarnation of the thunder god. In an instant, Ling Binbing and the black-clothed Zhuowen engaged in a great battle. Under the encirclement of countless green lightning stars, it was as if they had entered a no-man's land. They constantly collided, bombarded, and flew. The battle between the two was basically evenly matched. Countless cracks appeared on the entire planet where the gloomy illusion sect was located. It trembled terrifyingly, as if the entire planet would collapse at any moment. Many of the spectating cultivators that had gathered on the planet fled the planet. There were even some unlucky cultivators who were directly blown to smithereens by the shockwaves of the battle because they were too close. Zhuowen's original body took a step forward. Over 9,000 ancient swords revolved around him like an upside-down waterfall, forming a storm of sword light. Then, he joined the battle as well. The ancient swords in the storm of swordlight were all forged by the ancient sword Saint King. They had followed the ancient sword Saint King for countless years in the past. It was easy to imagine how powerful they were. Chapter 2157. Blood Thunder Prison. This kid actually has such a powerful clone. If I'm not wrong, that clone uses the two extreme energies of extreme lightning and extreme fire. Is that a true god of lightning and fire? Chen Changsheng, who had been watching the battle, couldn't help but stand up. His gaze was solemn as he looked at the distant battle. It wasn't just Chen Changsheng, Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz were similarly shocked. Among them, Yang Zhonghui muttered in a low voice, "No wonder Zhuowen was so confident in challenging Ling Binbing to a duel. It turns out that he has a clone of the true god of thunder and fire. If that's the case, it will be somewhat difficult for Ling Binbing to defeat him." Fu Yuz sneered, "It's not just difficult. The chances of him losing are probably even higher. After all, even his original body has joined in. If they work together, Ling Binbing is already one of the weakest ancestors of the 10 great sects. It'll be very difficult for him to win this time." Chen Changsheng suddenly transmitted his voice, "Looks like we can't just sit by and watch. According to our agreement with Sect Master Ling, this kid Zhuowen must die. Although this Zhuowen knows how to conduct himself and is very tactful, we've already made an agreement with Sect Master Ling and established a contract. This kid can't be left alive. We were careless. Let's wait first. It's not appropriate for us to make a move now. That Ling Binbing still has a trump card that he hasn't used. If he uses that trump card and still fails to kill this Zhuowen, we'll make a move," Fu Yuz replied. "I agree with Brother Fu. Although the four of us have an agreement, this Ling Binbing can't just sit there and do nothing. Let the three of us go together. After Ling Binbing uses his trump card, we'll see how things go," Yang Zhonghui said. Seeing that Fu Yuz and Yang Zhonghui were not in a hurry to make a move, Chen Changsheng could only give up. He said indifferently, "Then let's just wait and see." Bang bang bang. As the battle between Zhuowen and Ling Binbing grew more and more intense, the surrounding space within a radius of 5 million kilometers collapsed. The planet that the Dark Mirage sect was on had long been reduced to dust by the shockwaves from their battle, and the spectating cultivators had to retreat again and again. Suddenly, everyone discovered a terrifying scarlet light erupting from the battlefield. This light was like blood. It was incomparably bright, and the surrounding starry sky was dyed blood-red by this light. Within this scarlet light, an extremely terrifying aura spread out. All the cultivators who felt this aura felt their hearts tighten, as if their hearts were being ruthlessly pulled. Ling Binbing has used his trump card. Zhuowen is most likely going to be defeated, Chen Changsheng said with a burning gaze. Yang Zhonghui nodded and said that Zhuowen was able to force Ling Binbing to use his trump card. He's really not simple. Although he lost this time, it's still an honorable defeat, but Fu Yuz laughed coldly and continued, however, we definitely have to kill this kid completely. This kid's void sky 5 steps, and in addition to real god Lei Hua's split body, he already has the ability to threaten the 10 great sects. If this kid is given enough time, I'm afraid we might not be able to suppress him. Before this kid grows up, we have to kill him. The scarlet light grew brighter and brighter. Then, 2 figures flew out from the center of the scarlet light in quite a sorry state. They barely managed to stabilize themselves 1,000,000 miles away. These 2 figures were Zhuowen's original body and his split body, who were dressed in white. Zhuowen's eyes squinted and he looked extremely solemn. At first, Ling Binbing was originally suppressed by him. However, for some unknown reason, the old man took out a palm-sized scarlet crystal from his spiritual ring. Ling Binbing crushed the scarlet crystal and an intense scarlet light burst out from it. It was also filled with an extremely pungent smell of blood. The scarlet light was filled with extremely vast energy. Zhuowen was careless and he was hit by the power of the scarlet light. He couldn't help but fly out with a pale face. The scarlet light that spread out was extremely fast. In an instant, it enveloped the surrounding starry sky of tens of millions of miles. Then, the scarlet light transformed into strange red lines that intertwined with the starry sky of tens of millions of miles, forming an extremely huge scarlet prison. Because the red lines were too dense and the strange red lines had the ability to block out divine sense, the cultivators outside had no idea what was happening inside the prison. Because Zhuowen was the closest to Ling Binbing and the scarlet light was too fast, Zhuowen was unquestionably trapped in the red prison. Ling Binbing's scarlet lightning prison is extraordinary. If Ling Binbing used this move on me, I would probably have to take out a sub-heaven-shattering divine artifact to deal with it. Then Zhuowen's chances of survival aren't high, Chen Changsheng commented indifferently. At this moment, countless bolts of blood lightning gathered in the core area of the scarlet lightning prison. In the core area, a figure slowly walked over. This person was surrounded by dense bolts of blood lightning. At first glance, he looked like he was wearing a sinister blood-red armor. Little bastard, you forced me to use the bloody thunder hell. Well done. Don't worry, as a reward, I won't kill you right away. I'll capture you and use all the torture methods in the world on you. This person was Ling Binbing. In this scarlet lightning prison, Ling Binbing's power was far greater than it had been before. In the past, Ling Binbing was only slightly stronger than a king spirit. Now, however, he was much stronger than a king spirit. He was very close to Old Man Ruthless. Ling Binbing, however, did not feel happy at all. The Bloody Thunder Prison was his trump card, and he only had one piece of the scarlet crystal that created the Bloody Thunder Prison. Furthermore, it took him 100,000 years and many precious medicines and resources to get that one piece. Originally, Ling Binbing's Blood Thunder Prison was enough to put him on the same level as Chen Changsheng and the other sect masters who had secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts. However, now that he had used the Blood Thunder Prison ahead of time, he was probably going to be inferior. What was more hateful was that if Ling Binbing wanted to recreate the red crystal, he would have to spend another 100,000 years, and there was no guarantee that he would succeed. Therefore, Ling Binbing hated Zhuowen to the core. Sizzle. Ling Binbing waved his right hand, and the area where Zhuowen was at was immediately filled with countless blood lightning bolts that attacked him. Zhuowen immediately tried to dodge and block, but it was no use. The bolts of blood lightning were too dense. In particular, his main body was much weaker than his clone, and there were many hideous wounds on his body from the blood lightning. Zhuoan had no choice but to put the original body into devour space. Then, he let the black-clothed Zhuoan resist the bolts of blood lightning alone. Your clone is not bad. It is Thunder Fire True God. But even Thunder Fire True God will have to die in my Scarlet Lightning prison. Ling Binbing laughed cruelly. He performed a spell with his right hand. Suddenly, the bolts of blood lightning became denser and denser. It looked like they were going to blow Zhuoan into pieces. Zhuoan took a deep breath and said coldly, "You forced me to do this. I didn't want to reveal my original body, but now I have to." Ling Binbing was stunned. Apparently, he did not understand what Zhuoan meant. But soon, he understood. The demonic mist around Zhuoan's clone began to roll violently. Chapter 2158. One human and one beast. The demonic fog churned at an extremely fast speed. Soon after, an extremely huge and frightening beast charged out from the churning demonic fog. This giant beast was so huge that when it stood up, it actually reached the top of the Blood Thunder prison, causing the Blood Thunder prison to tremble violently. Ling Binbing was frightened, looking at the giant beast in front of him. He couldn't help but exclaim, "Is that Devour? This guy's real body is Devour." As he spoke, Ling Binbing slowly retreated, his face gloomy to the extreme. When Zhuoan's clone was Thunder Fire True God, Shi Yang thought that it would be tough to deal with him. However, he had never thought that it wasn't the real power of this man's clone. Without a doubt, Devour's real body was much stronger than before. Moreover, Devour had the two extreme powers, the extreme fire and extreme lightning, which made him even tougher to deal with. Boom. Unfortunately, Devour didn't give Ling Binbing more time to think. It roared and stormed over. Its massive claws seemed to be able to tear apart everything in this world. The dense blood lightning in the Blood Thunder prison hit Devour, but it didn't affect him at all. It was like scratching an itch. Ling Binbing raised the blue lightning all in his hand. However, it wasn't releasing the blue lightning anymore. It was the blood lightning, which was much stronger than the blue lightning all. Boom. The sharp claws heavily smashed onto the all, producing a terrifying muffled sound that resembled the roar of thunder. Ling Binbing let out a muffled groan. He only felt that the all that he was holding with both hands was being pressed down by an incomparably huge mountain. The all almost slipped out of his hands, and Ling Binbing himself retreated continuously. "Damn it! Back off!" Ling Binbing roared angrily and clenched the all in his hand tightly. A dazzling scarlet light burst out from the all, and the blood thunder rushed out like a swarm of locusts. His originally retreating figure finally stopped. Rumble. Instantly, the terrifying energy burst out from Ling Binbing's body, blowing away Devour's sharp claws. Devour couldn't help but take several steps backward. Ling Binbing's Blood Thunder prison is really amazing. He can use the power of the entire Blood Thunder territory to resist Devour. However, this Blood Thunder prison is like a secret technique, so it should have a time limit. Zhuoan's real body in Devour's body was calmly analyzing the situation. Although he was surprised by Ling Binbing's power, he didn't mind it. With Devour's current competence, although he couldn't subdue Ling Binbing, he could consume Ling Binbing's energy continuously. Once the bloody thunder hell reached its limit, Ling Binbing would eventually become a fish on his chopping board, at his mercy. Boom. Boom. Thinking of this, Devour's attacks became fiercer. Like a storm, his attacks fell on Ling Binbing. At the same time, Ling Binbing didn't show any weakness. With the mighty power of the Blood Thunder prison, he was evenly matched with Devour. However, if one took a closer look, they could see that Ling Binbing was still in a disadvantageous position. After all, as time passed, the power of the Blood Thunder prison was weakening. On the other hand, Devour was getting fiercer. Outside the Blood Thunder prison, countless cultivators were watching the massive blood-red barrier in silence. Many of them tried to send out their divine senses to check the situation inside the Blood Thunder prison. Although they couldn't see what was inside the Blood Thunder prison, they could hear the terrifying roars of beasts coming from the Blood Thunder prison. They could also hear the fierce collisions and the figures fighting inside. Everyone knew that the battle between Zhuoan and Ling Binbing had reached its climax. It was a battle at the 8 steps void sky level, which was a rare sight. Many cultivators were itching to see it. Chen Changsheng, Yong Zhonghui, and Fu Yu's frowned. Chen Changsheng said in a deep voice, "It's been more than 1 hour. Why hasn't the battle ended yet?" As far as Chen Changsheng and the others were concerned, Ling Binbing's strength had greatly increased after displaying the Blood Lightning Prison. He should be able to easily suppress and defeat Shuo Wen. However, more than 1 hour had passed, and the battle inside the Blood Thunder Prison still hadn't stopped. Instead, it was getting more and more intense. This made the 3 of them surprised by Zhuo Wen's strength. "It seems that we have underestimated Zhuo Wen. Even Ling Binbing, who displayed the Blood Thunder Prison, couldn't take him down. This is really beyond my expectations," Fu Yu said with a gloomy expression. Chen Changsheng nodded. The coldness in his eyes became even more intense. He said, "This kid can't be left alive. If Ling Binbing really can't kill him this time, the 3 of us will take action and kill him." Crack. Suddenly, the surface of the Blood Thunder Prison, which spanned tens of millions of miles across the starry sky, suddenly became densely packed with cracks. Moreover, the cracks became denser and more terrifying. A force that could collapse the starry sky soared into the sky from the Blood Thunder Prison. Some unlucky cultivators who were close didn't expect the Blood Thunder Prison to collapse at all. The moment they approached the Blood Thunder Prison, they were swept in by the terrifying collapsing force. Not even their bones were left behind. Hey! The Blood Thunder Prison has shattered. Is the battle over? The other onlookers who originally intended to approach the Bloody Thunder Prison, after seeing the cultivators who were swept away by the collapsing power, they all moved away in embarrassment, but their eyes were fixed on the Bloody Thunder Prison that was beginning to shatter. Chen Changsheng and the other 2 also stared at the Blood Thunder Prison with solemn expressions. They had a bad feeling in their hearts. Rumble. The Blood Thunder Prison had completely collapsed. Then, everyone discovered that within the Blood Thunder Prison, a huge beast that was tens of millions of miles long was lying in the center of the countless fragments of the Blood Thunder Prison. Bang! At the same time, an extremely wretched figure was directly blasted out of the ground. Everyone looked over and found that the embarrassed figure wasn't someone else. It was Ling Binbing, who had just performed the terrifying Blood Thunder Prison. At this moment, Ling Binbing was covered in blood. His aura was weak, and he was lying in the void. His limbs drooped powerlessly, and he could only move slowly. His limbs were crippled. Everyone turned their heads to look and discovered that the gigantic beast was also wounded in many places. 60% of its scales had been ripped open, revealing its incomparably blood-red flesh. However, unlike Ling Binbing, who was like a dead dog, this giant beast was in a much better state. Moreover, people found that the wounds on its body had begun to heal slowly. Its self-healing ability was extremely powerful. Isn't that Zhuo Wen? Could it be that this terrifying giant beast is Zhuo Wen's mount? Someone with sharp eyes saw a young man in snow-white clothes standing on Devour's giant head. He couldn't help but exclaim. The others followed his exclamation and couldn't help but look at Devour. Indeed, they saw the young man in white standing there. Chapter 2159. Heavy losses. Swoosh. A figure flashed to Ling Binbing's side and extended his right hand towards Ling Binbing's neck. Shortly after, that person frowned and looked coldly at Ling Binbing as he said, "How dare you destroy Sect Master Ling's illusory heavenly bridge?" This person was none other than the Universal Sect's ancestor, Chen Changsheng. Zhuo Wen stood on Devour's head and looked down at Chen Changsheng. He could see the killing intent in Chen Changsheng's eyes. After swallowing the heavenly domain starry sky essence, Zhuo Wen took out half a barrel and poured it into Devour's mouth. Devour, who had been severely injured, instantly recovered to his peak condition after swallowing half a barrel of heavenly domain starry sky essence. Devour's body was too big. 1 or 2 drops of heavenly domain starry sky essence were useless to Devour. Seeing Zhuo Wen take out half a barrel of heavenly domain starry sky essence for Devour, the crowd went into an uproar. Many cultivators looked at Devour with burning eyes and their breathing quickened. One had to admit that Zhuo Wen was really generous. He took out half a barrel of heavenly domain starry sky essence for Devour and didn't even frown. What did this mean? It meant that Zhuowen had a lot of heavenly domain starry sky essence. Although many cultivators coveted Zhuowen's heavenly domain starry sky essence, after seeing Ling Binbing's miserable state, many cultivators shuddered and immediately calmed down. Senior Chen, when I fought with Ling Binbing, we didn't say that we couldn't destroy each other's illusory heavenly bridge, did we? Do you have a problem with that? Zhuowen said indifferently. However, he was secretly alarmed. This Chen Changsheng was a little strange. Attack! Chen Changsheng suddenly gave a loud shout. He lifted up the half-dead Ling Binbing with one hand and fiercely threw him towards Zhuowen, while his right leg kicked off and he shot towards Zhuowen like a gust of wind. At the same time, Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz followed closely behind, forming a pincer formation as they quickly approached Zhuowen. Chen Changsheng and the other two were too fast. Before the surrounding crowd could even react, they discovered that Zhuowen had already been surrounded by Chen Changsheng and the other two. At the same time, Chen Changsheng and the others all pulled out their secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts and blasted them toward Zhuowen in unison. They wanted to take Zhuowen's life from the get-go. The king spirits, who had wanted to get closer to Zhuowen, were shocked. They sped up, and Old Man Emotionless was the first to move. However, they were quite a distance away from Zhuowen. Moreover, Chen Changsheng and the other two had clearly planned this beforehand. Their cooperation was extremely tacit. Their first move to kill was beyond their expectations. 3 secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. Zhuowen, who was standing on Devour's head, couldn't help but narrow his eyes when he saw Chen Changsheng and the other two's actions. Although he could faintly sense that Ling Binbing was rather fearful and respectful of Chen Changsheng's trio, he didn't pay much attention to it at first, but now he finally realized that all three of them actually possessed secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts. One had to know that the difference between a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact and a void sky divine artifact was huge. If a cultivator with a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact had an 8th-step void sky divine artifact, they could absolutely crush their opponent. Yarrow Xiong was only at the 6th-step void sky divine artifact, while King Spirit was at the peak of the 7th-step void sky divine artifact. However, because Yarrow Xiong had the supreme shining sun blade, King Spirit was extremely afraid of him. In the end, King Spirit had to pay a heavy price to defeat Yarrow Xiong. Of course, this was also because King Spirit had the heavenly star essence. Moreover, the supreme shining sun blade wasn't a true secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact. It was a divine artifact between a void sky divine artifact and a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact. From this, one could see just how powerful a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact was. Now that Chen Changsheng and the other two had used their secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts, it was clear that they wanted to kill Zhuowen. Zhuowen immediately entered Devour's inner world. At the same time, he released the ice lotuses. The ice lotuses surrounded Devour's body, forming a tough ice armor. At the same time, the ice lotuses released a torrential cold chi, turning Devour's surroundings into a world of ice and snow. The ice lotuses were originally obtained by Yu Wuxi through a fortuitous encounter. In fact, their defensive power had already reached the level of a secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact. Besides, Devour had also released his innate supernatural abilities, the Purgatory and the Heavenly Thunder Eye. The Purgatory was used to weaken Chen Changsheng's team, while the Heavenly Thunder Eye released scorching black lightning that surrounded Zhuowen, creating a lightning defense. Not only that, but Zhuowen also operated the secret technique, Rain of Thousand Swords, and summoned the King Sword. More than 9,000 ancient swords were summoned by the King Sword. The dense sword lights turned into a ring-shaped storm of sword lights that revolved around Zhuowen. By the time Zhuowen completed the last layer of defense, Chen Changsheng and the other two had already made their move. The secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact in Chen Changsheng's hand was a long sword engraved with many ancient patterns. When he swung the sword, the patterns on the sword actually materialized, transforming into a powerful offensive. Yang Zhonghui's secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact was an embroidery needle. This embroidery needle was like fire. When it was swung out, it left a fiery red trail in the air, setting off terrifying flames. Fu Yu's secondary heaven-crushing divine artifact was a meteor hammer. This meteor hammer was surrounded by starlight. When it was swung out, it set off a dense meteor shower. This meteor shower wasn't illusory, but real. Its power was much stronger than the meteor shower formed in the starry sky. The three attacks bombarded Zhuowen's body. The surrounding starry sky collapsed layer by layer, revealing a vast expanse of darkness and nothingness. Catcher. In an instant, the defense formed by the 9,000 ancient swords around Zhuowen was the first to be hit. Then, Zhuowen's eyes turned gloomy as he saw the 9,000 ancient swords being blown away rapidly. In just 2 breaths of time, 4,000 to 5,000 ancient swords had been destroyed. In other words, these 4,000 to 5,000 ancient swords were completely annihilated into nothingness. They were completely useless. Even if Zhuowen wanted to repair them, it would be a little difficult. In 5 breaths of time, the 9,000 ancient swords were completely destroyed, shattering into countless fragments. Then, the domains released by Devour's 2 innate abilities were also broken. They couldn't hold on for long. In the end, 3 attacks landed heavily on Devour's body. Catcher. Then, countless cracks appeared on the ice lotus armor on Devour's surface, as if it would shatter at any moment. Zhuowen felt his internal organs tumbling. Even with Devour's tough body, he still couldn't bear the bombardment of 3 secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. Go! Zhuowen roared, ordering Devour to flee as fast as he could. Blood splattered all over the starry sky. On Devour's massive body, several tens of thousands of li-long wounds had appeared. Blood spurted out like a rain of blood. He's not dead. Keep chasing. Chen Changsheng was surprised. The 3 of them had attacked at the same time, using their secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. Even a Void Sky 8 Steps expert would have to bear a grudge. However, Devour's clone had withstood it. Although he was severely injured, he wasn't dead. Old Wu Qing, hurry up! Sensing the pursuit of Chen Changsheng's group, Zhuowen shouted at Old Man Wu Qing. Chapter 2160. Teleportation Bang. 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 Chen Changsheng's group of 3 crashed heavily into the ancient formation. Soon after, the 3 of them were forced back by the powerful energy of the formation. Their eyes were filled with shock. A peak level 8 formation? And it even has a trace of the charm of a level 9 formation. Who set it up? Fu Yu said in surprise. Let's not worry about that for now. Let's work together to break this formation. Chen Changsheng was flustered and exasperated. They were almost able to completely annihilate that Zhuowen, but that brat still managed to escape. He was extremely unwilling to accept this. Fu Yu's and Yang Zhonghui naturally had no objections. Soon after, the 3 of them used the secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts in their hands, no longer holding back. Instead, they fiercely bombarded the ancient formation before them. Boom! 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 The might of the 3 secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts was indeed terrifying. Under the bombardment of the secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts, the entire formation was on the verge of collapse, as if it would shatter at any moment. Outside the ancient formation, Zhuowen's original body flew out from the world within his body. He gloomily looked at the constantly shaking ancient formation and said in a low voice, "Old Man Wu Qing, can you handle these 3? Handle your sister. Can't you see that all 3 of them have secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts in their hands? Especially that Chen Changsheng. Although that old man's cultivation is slightly weaker than mine, I can feel that his strength is definitely not ordinary. Coupled with the secondary heaven-shattering divine artifacts from last time, I may not necessarily be Chen Changsheng's match. Coupled with that Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's, if I were to face the 3 of them, wouldn't I end up dying a horrible death? Brat, do you want me to die?" Old Man Wu Qing cursed loudly, causing Zhuowen to feel extremely awkward. As Old Man Wu Qing had previously helped him eliminate Yu Wuxi, Zhuowen subconsciously thought that this old man's strength was unfathomable and that he should be able to handle Chen Changsheng's group. But now, it seemed that he had been overthinking things. Looks like you admit that your strength is inferior to Chen Changsheng's group, Zhuowen said in surprise. Bullsh*t. Bullsh*t. This old man is weaker than the three of them. If the three of them didn't have secondary heaven-breaking divine artifacts, I wouldn't have a problem fighting them alone. However, all three of them have secondary heaven-breaking divine artifacts, old man Wu Qing cursed. Don't tell me you don't have a heaven-crushing divine tool? Zhuowen looked at old man Wu Qing in surprise. Old man Wu Qing harumphed. I do, but do you think I'm stupid when faced with 3 secondary heaven-crushing divine tools? Why should I risk my life for you? Zhuowen frowned. Thinking about it, he felt that what old Emotionless said made sense. There was no way the old man would risk his life for him. Rumble. Suddenly, the ancient array behind him shook even more violently. Countless cracks appeared on its surface, causing Zhuowen to tremble in fear. Old man, the three of them are about to break out of the array. Hurry up and activate the teleportation array. Where did you set it up? Zhuowen's face sank slightly. Old man Wu Qing's eyes flickered. He knew that the situation was urgent, so he did not argue with Zhuowen. He said indifferently, "Come with me. Your battle with Ling Binbing was too intense. You almost destroyed the teleportation array. Fortunately, I was quick-witted and changed the location of the teleportation array ahead of time." Zhuowen followed behind old man Wu Qing with the Emperor spirit. Soon, they landed near the old site of the Gloomy Illusion sect. The Gloomy Illusion sect had long been reduced to rubble, forming a dangerous area like an asteroid belt. The majestic Gloomy Illusion sect of the past had long since ceased to exist. Passing through the rubble, old man Wu Qing quickly stopped at the center of the rubble. He formed a seal with his hands, and immediately, a white light appeared in the empty central area. The white light became more and more intense, extending for several kilometers before interweaving into an enormous array. The instant the formation appeared, the ancient formation trapping Chen Changsheng in the distance finally collapsed completely. Afterwards, Chen Changsheng and the other two rushed out. Zhuowen, where do you think you're going? You're definitely going to die today. Chen Changsheng immediately spotted Zhuowen in the center of the rubble. When he saw the array in the center, his gaze changed slightly. He could tell that the array was a teleportation array. Swish, 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 swish. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's obviously guessed Zhuowen's intentions as well. They shot out, directly chasing after Zhuowen. They wanted to kill Zhuowen before Zhuowen entered the teleportation array or destroy it. Let's go. Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. He hurriedly led everyone into the teleportation array, while old man Wu Qing remained in the array. He formed a profound finger technique with his right hand and jabbed at the center of the array. An extremely blazing light erupted from the teleportation array. Immediately after, a suction force pulled Zhuowen and the others towards it. Before Chen Changsheng could arrive, Zhuowen and the others finally disappeared into the teleportation array. Bastard. This is a temporary teleportation array. This guy set it up here a long time ago. Cunning brat, he must have been plotting against us. Chen Changsheng's gaze was gloomy. Fu Yu's hands jabbed at the center of the rubble as he silently deduced. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. Brother Fu, what's wrong? Chen Changsheng saw the change in Fu Yu's expression and could not help but ask in surprise. Fu Yu's gaze was strange. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "I just deduced the location of the array. In the end, I discovered." Chen Changsheng felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly asked, "Discovered what?" "This teleportation array is a simulation of the ancient teleportation array. The destination is Heaven and Earth sect." Fu Yu sighed. Heaven and Earth sect? Chen Changsheng's expression changed. Wasn't that his sect? Chen Changsheng was no fool. When he knew that Zhuowen was teleporting to Heaven and Earth sect, he knew what Zhuowen wanted to do. Although he had already ordered the sect to activate the defensive array before leaving Heaven and Earth sect, he knew that without the support of an ancestor like him, the array would not be able to unleash its full power. It would not be able to block the attacks of an 8th stage Void Sky Cultivator. "I need to return to Heavenly Devil Island." I need to use the ancient teleportation array. Chen Changsheng did not even hesitate and left the place. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz hurriedly returned to Heavenly Devil Island after making arrangements for their high-ranking disciples. Although Zhuo Wen was heading to the Shiyu Qiankuan sect this time, given Zhuo Wen's hatred for them, it was likely that he would use the ancient transmission array of the Qiankuan sect to cause trouble in their sect. This was not something they wanted to see. The defensive array of Heavenly Devil Island was still activated. When the disciples of Heavenly Devil Island saw Chen Changsheng return, their eyes were filled with vigilance. Magatama narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "The three of you, why did you come to my Heavenly Devil Island again? Do you think that my Heavenly Devil Island is easy to bully?" Chen Changsheng clasped his hands and said, "Brother Mo, it's a misunderstanding. This time, we plan to borrow the ancient teleportation array of your Heavenly Devil Island. In Dongyu, only your Heavenly Devil Island has an ancient teleportation array." Chapter 2161. Heaven and Earth sect. Magatama's eyes flickered as he cupped his hands and smiled. "I'm really sorry. Our Heavenly Demon Island's ancient teleportation array has some problems, so I'm afraid I can't help you." Chen Changsheng's face immediately darkened. "Brother Mo, what do you mean? You don't want us to use the ancient teleportation array and want to help that little bastard Zhuowen?" From Chen Changsheng's point of view, Magatama was just making excuses. Even Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yu's gazes weren't friendly. Magatama, however, wasn't afraid. He spread his hands and said, "If you two don't believe me, you can go take a look at Heavenly Demon Island's teleportation array. I'm not lying." As he spoke, Magatama opened the defensive array. Chen Changsheng and the other two looked at each other. They obviously didn't expect Magatama to open the array so easily. The three of them cupped their hands towards Magatama and headed towards Heavenly Demon Island's teleportation array. When they arrived at the ancient teleportation array, the faces of Chen Changsheng and the other two darkened. What Mo Tian said earlier wasn't wrong. There was indeed a problem with the ancient teleportation array. At the corner of the teleportation array, there was a massive gap, causing the ancient teleportation array to be unable to be used normally. "Brother Mo, your teleportation array is an important area of Heavenly Demon Island. How could there be such a gap? Could it be that you intentionally damaged it?" Chen Changsheng said coldly. Mo Tian let out a snort and said, "Brother Chen, don't make false accusations. I believe you are clearer than me about the preciousness of the ancient teleportation array. I wouldn't go so far as to intentionally damage it." Chen Changsheng and the other two frowned. Although they were flustered and exasperated, they didn't dare to lose their temper at Magatama. After all, Magatama wasn't weak and they were currently in Heavenly Demon Island's headquarters. The three of them might be able to suppress Mo Tian if they worked together, but they didn't wish to offend Mo Tian. After all, the Heaven Devil Island was one of the top 10 sects, and it was definitely one of the top 2 sects. If they offended Mo Tian, the final outcome would be a lose-lose situation for both sides. Yang Zhonghui and Fu Yuz both looked at Chen Changsheng, waiting for him to make the decision. "Go." Chen Changsheng snorted coldly and left the Heavenly Demon Island. Ever since he found out that Zhuowen had been teleported to Heaven and Earth sect, Chen Changsheng lost his cool. Since he couldn't use the ancient transfer array in Heaven Devil Island, he could only rush back to Heaven and Earth sect as soon as possible. "Brother Chen, I won't go back to Shiyu with you." Yang Zhonghui cupped her hands at Chen Changsheng, then led the upper echelons of the Devil Pearl sect and parted ways with Chen Changsheng. Chen Changsheng didn't stop him. Devil Pearl sect was in Southern Universe. Now that Zhuowen was going to Heaven and Earth sect first, if he really caused a ruckus in Heaven and Earth sect, then his next target would be Void Rush Summit and Devil Pearl sect. Moreover, Devil Pearl sect wasn't in Western Universe, so Yang Zhonghui had no reason to follow Chen Changsheng. "I hope the sect's defensive array can hold on." Chen Changsheng steered the flying ship, his heart filled with worry. Outside the Heaven and Earth sect, a white light flashed and a group of people appeared. The Heaven and Earth sect isn't far away. Given Chen Changsheng's caution, he should have activated the defensive array before leaving. Zhuowen, dressed in white, stood in front of the group, his eyes filled with sharp light. This time, he had suffered great losses. His primitive demonic golden sword had been damaged long ago, and even the ancient sword Sage King's 9,000 ancient swords had been destroyed. The glorious amethyst galaxy divine sword had been shattered, and even the ice lotus was covered in fine cracks. According to Zhuo Wen's estimation, it would be very difficult to repair the ice lotus. Moreover, due to the dense cracks, its cultivation effects were much weaker than before. This made Zhuowen even more annoyed and disgusted with Chen Chongqing's group. How do you plan to get in? The Heaven and Earth sect is much stronger than High Heaven sect and Dark Illusion sect. If we force our way in, not only will we alert them, we may not succeed, Old Man Wu Qing said solemnly. We'll find a way to sneak in. Once we do, we'll kill them all, Zhuowen said coldly. Our group is too obvious now. You should all enter the spirit ring first. After I sneak into the Heaven and Earth sect, I'll let you out. Zhuowen said. Di Ling and the others had no objections, but Old Man Wu Qing was adamant. Zhuowen didn't insist. After putting away Di Ling and the others, he had Old Man Wu Qing follow behind him. The two of them spent 6 hours and finally got close to the Heaven and Earth sect. The Heaven and Earth sect was a sect built on 3 huge stars. Its area and scale were far greater than High Heaven sect and Dark Illusion sect. At this moment, the area around the Heaven and Earth sect was surrounded by a light barrier and ripples. A powerful spirit array had been set up, which was the Heaven and Earth sect's defensive array. Look, the Heaven and Earth sect is heavily guarded. If you want to enter, it'll be too difficult. Old Man Wu Qing crossed his arms and said calmly. That's not necessarily true. However, Zhuo Wen smiled confidently. Soon after, he retrieved the Thunder Fire Sword from his spirit ring. After instructing it, Blackie, who was within the Thunder Fire Sword, chuckled mischievously. Then, it turned into a ray of sword light and disappeared from its original spot. What were you talking about with the sword spirit just now? Old Man Wu Qing's eyes were filled with surprise. Just now, Zhuowen and Xiao He were communicating with each other, so he didn't hear the details. You'll know when you see, Zhuowen smiled mysteriously. The Heaven and Earth sect's disciples had a strict hierarchy. They were divided into core disciples, inner disciples, outer disciples, and odd job disciples. Among the 4 classes, the odd job disciples had the lowest status. They were also the group that the Heaven and Earth sect didn't value the most. They did the most tiring work but could only cultivate the simplest cultivation techniques. They also had to endure the beatings and scoldings of the other senior disciples. Huang Xinli was a Heaven and Earth sect odd job disciple. He hadn't been in the Heaven and Earth sect for long and was angry at the low status of the odd job disciples. However, he couldn't do anything about it and could only endure it silently. He hoped that when he became stronger in the future, he could change everything. Of course, Huang Xinli's wish was beautiful. However, reality was cruel. He was a powerless rookie now. Hey, there's a sword here. The color of the sword looks good. Passing by a broken star, Huang Xinli's consciousness scanned the area as usual to avoid the meteorites that were flying towards him. However, he soon discovered that not far ahead, there was a divine sword with lightning and fire. It was sandwiched between 2 pieces of rocks and looked extremely inconspicuous. If it wasn't for the fact that Huang Xinli had to pass by the rocks, he wouldn't have discovered the divine sword. After pondering for a moment, Huang Xinli pulled out the divine sword and held it in his hand. Then, he slashed out with his right hand. Instantly, a terrifying sword chi soared into the sky. Then, all the rocks within a few thousand miles around him were reduced to dust. This divine sword is so powerful. Huang Xinli was stunned. His eyes were filled with shock. This was definitely the most powerful divine weapon he had ever seen. This is definitely a void sky divine weapon. I have to hide it well. Otherwise, I'm afraid I'll be killed. Chapter 2162. Lu Xianhuang Xinli's heart was filled with apprehension. He was just a servant disciple of the Qiankuan sect. Without enough talent and resources, He could only be a servant disciple his entire life. But now that he had obtained the divine sword, he knew that his fate was about to change. He might even become a peerless expert in the future. Thinking about this, Huang Xinli's body trembled with excitement. Lu Xian despises me for being a servant disciple. A few days ago, she abandoned me and threw herself into Mu Gaofei's arms. Isn't it because Mu Gaofei is an outer sect disciple and his status is higher than mine? Huang Xinli's face suddenly turned ferocious. Lu Xian was his lover. Back then, the two of them entered the Tranquil sect as servant disciples. Moreover, Lu Xian's beauty was extraordinary. Because Huang Xinli had such a lover, he was often bullied by the other servant disciples. However, Huang Xinli did not mind. As long as Lu Xian was by his side, he was willing to suffer any hardship. But a few days ago, LV Xian threw herself into the arms of an outer court disciple, Mu Gaofei, and heartlessly abandoned him. Huang Xinli was completely dispirited, and urgently wanted to become stronger, wanting to prove himself to LV Xian. Now that Huang Xinli had obtained the divine sword, he regained his confidence. This was because when he held the divine sword, a sentence appeared in his mind. I can make you stronger. Although the words were simple, Huang Xinli did not doubt it. Especially after he felt the power of the divine sword, he did not doubt the voice that appeared in his mind. Outside the Chenkuan sect's array, Huang Xinli rushed to the gate and his eyes were filled with apprehension. Ever since the Chenkuan sect's array was activated, the Chenkuan sect became very strict with the disciples entering and exiting. Take out your identity token. At the gate, the two guards looked at Huang Xinli indifferently. They did not seem to care. Huang Xinli was wearing the clothes of a servant disciple. There were too many disciples with such low status in the Chenkuan sect. Hence, they did not pay much attention to him. After Huang Xinli took out his identity token, the two guards looked at it and opened a gap in the array. They said coldly, "Get in here." Huang Xinli nodded submissively and hurriedly entered the gate. Soon after, the defensive formation closed again. Huang Xinli rushed straight to his residence, closed the low door, and impatiently took out the divine sword from his spirit ring. However, the moment he took out the divine sword, he discovered that a figure had appeared in his room. It was a young man in snow-white robes. "You? Who are you?" Huang Xinli immediately clenched the divine sword in his hand and looked nervously at the white-clothed youth in front of him. He actually didn't sense how this person had appeared in his room. However, when Huang Xinli thought of the divine sword in his hand, he calmed down a lot. He coldly said, "If you know what's good for you, get out of my room immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless." "You're welcome. Do you think you can do it with that divine sword in your hand?" the white-clothed youth said with a mocking smile. Huang Xinli's gaze darkened. He recalled the powerful might of the divine sword from before and calmed down a lot. He said, "Since you are courting death, then don't blame me." As he spoke, Huang Xinli wielded the sword in his right hand and slashed at the white-clothed youth. However, what surprised Huang Xinli was that the divine sword didn't display the powerful sword radiance. Instead, it left his hand and floated around the white-clothed youth. What is going on? Huang Xinli was so shocked that he sat on the ground. "Because the divine sword is mine," the white-clothed youth said calmly. Huang Xinli realized something and hurriedly knelt on the ground. He kowtowed to the white-clothed youth and said, "Senior, I have eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. I actually took your divine sword. Please spare my life." "No. You didn't do anything wrong. Moreover, you did well. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to enter Chenkuan sect. You can take this." The white-clothed youth smiled and took out a brocade box from his spirit ring. He passed it to Huang Xinli and said, "This is fire spirit juice. It can help you break through to real God. Take it." Huang Xinli trembled and took the brocade box. He stuttered and said, "Fire spirit juice? Is it really fire spirit juice?" "Senior, this is too precious. Take it. Moreover, I have a small favor that I need your help with." The white-clothed youth smiled faintly. Huang Xinli excitedly kept the brocade box and said, "Senior, please tell me. If I can do it, I will do it for you. It's simple. You just need to sleep for a while. After the white-clothed youth finished speaking, he waved his right hand and a blast of energy hit Huang Xinli's neck, knocking him out. After settling Huang Xinli down, Zhuowen set up a shielding array around Huang Xinli and walked out of the room. The identity of this white-clothed young man was naturally obvious. He was Zhuo Wen. After leaving the room, Zhuowen's facial muscles started to move and he turned into Huang Xinli's appearance. Chen Changsheng, you betrayed me and even wanted to take my, Zhuo Wen's, life. Very well, today, I, Zhuo Wen, shall wreak havoc in your heaven and earth sect. Zhuowen laughed coldly in his heart and walked towards the core of the Chenkuan sect, the Chenkuan Tower. Although it was Zhuowen's first time in the Chenkuan sect, he had checked Huang Xinli's memories and knew that the Chenkuan Tower was the core of the Chenkuan sect. It was said that 80% of the experts in the Chenkuan sect were in the Chenkuan Tower. It was said that the Chenkuan Tower was a huge cultivation pagoda. It could help cultivators cultivate faster. Any disciple in the Chenkuan sect could cultivate in the Chenkuan Tower, including the servant disciples. However, it required contribution points to cultivate in the Chenkuan Tower. The servant disciples had too little contribution points and very few disciples were willing to cultivate in the Chenkuan Tower. Most of them were outer disciples, inner disciples, and core disciples who cultivated in the Chenkuan Tower. Other than the disciples, the strongest elders in the Chenkuan sect would cultivate at the top of the Chenkuan Tower. It was said that only elders who had reached the 5th level and above could enter the top of the Chenkuan Tower. It was a place that many disciples desired to enter. Zhuowen knew that since the Chenkuan Tower was the core of the Chenkuan sect, he only needed to kill all the experts in the Chenkuan Tower and the Chenkuan sect wouldn't be much of a threat to him. This time, he wanted to catch the Chenkuan sect off guard. Otherwise, if the Chenkuan sect experts teamed up, he would be hard to deal with. Huang Xinli, what are you doing in the Chenkuan Tower? All of a sudden, a sharp female voice came from behind him. Zhuowen furrowed his brows and turned around to find a man and woman standing behind him. The man's nose was pointed towards the sky and he didn't even look at Huang Xinli. The aura he gave off was much stronger than Huang Xinli. He was already a true god. As for the woman, she was pretty and had a great figure. At this moment, she was leaning on the man's body gently. Chapter 2163. Universe Tower, what's the matter? Zhuowen coldly asked. Zhuowen knew from Huang Xinli's memories that she was his old love, Lu Xian. It was said that for resources, she threw herself into the embrace of Mu Gaofei. Zhuowen didn't have a good impression of this kind of woman, but he didn't want to meddle in other people's business. Lu Xian saw the cold expression on Zhuowen's face and couldn't help but be startled. Back then, Huang Xinli had never been so cold to her. Even when she threw herself into Mu Gaofei's embrace, he didn't give her such an expression. But now, Huang Xinli actually treated her so coldly. Lu Xian immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. She sneered and ridiculed, "You're just a useless odd-job disciple. How many contribution points can you have? Take a look at yourself. This universe pagoda is not a place for trash like you to enter. Do you dare to say that again?" Zhuo Wen's eyes narrowed dangerously as he said coldly. Lu Xian trembled and couldn't help but take a step back. But remembering that Huang Xinli was just a coward, Lu Xian steadied herself and coldly said, "I haven't seen you for a few days and you've become quite unreasonable. Am I wrong to say that you're trash and useless?" Pa. Just as LV Xian finished speaking, her right cheek was fiercely slapped, and a palm print appeared on it. "You, who hit me just now?" Lu Xian's eyes immediately turned red. She subconsciously thought that Huang Xinli had hit her, but when she turned to look, she found that Huang Xinli was standing in the same place, not moving at all. Mu Gaofei, who was originally standing beside Lu Xian, also revealed a strange expression. He also didn't see the person who hit Lu Xian. Just now, he only felt a sudden gust of wind, and then a handprint appeared on Lu Xian's cheek. "Brother Fei, did you see who hit me? You have to get justice for me." Lu Xian covered her cheek and immediately threw herself into Mu Gaofei's embrace, sobbing. Mu Gaofei puffed up his chest and looked at Zhuowen with an unfriendly gaze. Junior sister, I saw with my own eyes that it was this trash who hit you. Don't worry, Brother Fei will immediately help you vent your anger. LV Shen wept. Although she knew that Huang Xinli didn't move, in order to please Mu Gaofei, she still nodded and said softly, Brother Fei, you're the best. Mu Gaofei laughed and walked towards Zhuowen. He raised his head and looked at Zhuowen with extreme disdain. Surnamed Zhuowen, if you don't want to die then immediately kneel down and crawl under my crotch until you reach LV Shen. Then let her slap you 18 times. Zhuowen couldn't be bothered with this clown, Mu Gaofei, and directly slapped him. The strength of this palm strike was too strong. Mu Gaofei was sent flying, his broken teeth scattered all over the ground. His face was even more distorted. It was obvious that his facial bones had been shattered. Mu Gaofei landed on the ground. His entire body was twitching, and his breathing was weak. He was actually crippled by this slap. Fei. Brother Fei? LV Shen, who was originally weeping, saw this scene. She was so scared that her beautiful face turned pale. She looked at this scene in horror. In LV Shen's eyes, Mu Gaofei, whose strength was ranked in the top 10 of the outer court disciples, was defeated by that trash Huang Xinli with one slap. Moreover, looking at Mu Gaofei's appearance, it was obvious that he was completely crippled by that slap. LV Shen wasn't an idiot. She immediately realized that there was a great disparity between Mu Gaofei and Huang Xinli's strength. Zhuowen no longer paid attention to these two clowns, LV Shen and Mu Gaofei. Instead, he directly walked towards the Universe Tower. The Universe Tower occupied a large area. It was surrounded by plazas. There were actually many shops located there. People came and went. It was very lively. Zhuowen walked to the entrance of the Universe Tower and was stopped by the guards. A mere odd job disciple. Do you have enough contribution points? The guard looked at Zhuowen's odd job disciple robe with disdain. Unfortunately, just as the guard finished speaking, Zhuowen took out the Emperor's sword. With a slash, the guard exploded into a bloody mist. Contribution points. I really don't have any. Zhuowen sneered as he said this. Then, he directly entered the Universe Tower, leaving behind the stunned crowd in the surrounding plaza. Are you kidding me? That odd job disciple actually killed the Universe Tower's guard with one slash? How can he be so strong? Also, what is that guy trying to do? Killing the guards and entering the Universe Pagoda. Are you trying to court death? After a moment of silence, the plazas were in an uproar. The noise never stopped. The Universe Tower had a total of 9 floors. Each floor had a large number of disciples. The higher the floor, the more elite the disciples. The moment Zhuowen entered the Universe Tower, he took out the Thunderfire sword and Blood Immortal sword. He told the two of them not to hold back and kill all the disciples in the Universe Tower. At the same time, Zhuowen set up a level 7 Great Formation at the entrance of the Universe Tower. Anyone who wanted to take advantage of the chaos and escape the Universe Tower would be killed by this powerful level 7 Great Formation. Just like this, Zhuowen slowly headed towards the top of the Universe Pagoda. Everywhere he passed, there was a reign of terror. The disciples within the Universe Pagoda were basically unable to withstand a single sword strike from Zhuowen. In just a moment, Zhuowen reached the 8th floor of the Universe Tower. He found that most of the core disciples of the Universe sect were on the 8th floor of the Universe Tower. Although there were many core disciples whose cultivation levels weren't weak and had reached the virtual sky world, in Zhuowen's eyes, they were all jokes. His current strength was already comparable to an ordinary virtual sky realm 8th step cultivator. How could these core disciples be his opponents? Who dares to behave atrociously in my Universe Tower? You're simply courting death. When Zhuowen was constantly reaping the lives of the core disciples on the 8th floor, he finally alarmed the Elder on the 9th floor. The Elder has come out. We're saved. On the 8th floor, the eyes of the core disciples who had not lost their lives were filled with hope when they heard this voice. It was a black-clothed old man. His essence, chi, and spirit were extremely powerful. His cultivation should be around the virtual sky 6th step. In my eyes, You're no different from trash. Zhuoan suddenly slashed out with the king's sword in his right hand and used the seventh move of the Tao of Destruction sword art, sword swimming through the great void. The mysterious sword art was like flowing water, constantly surging back and forth between Zhuoan's hands. Zhuoan was like a fish swimming in water, taking mysterious steps and passing by the black-clothed old man. The black-robed old man's face changed drastically. Soon after, he discovered that his entire body was collapsing. This was because countless sword lights had filled his body, constantly slicing him apart layer by layer. In the end, the illusory bridge in his body completely collapsed under the terrifying attack of the sword lights. Plop! The black-clothed old man instantly fell to the ground without any signs of life. Clearly, he was dead. The 8th floor fell into a daze. The black-clothed old man was quite famous in the Chenkuan sect. An expert of the virtual Sky 6 step couldn't even last one move in front of this odd job disciple. Who is it? How dare you kill our Chenkuan sect's elder? The moment the black-clothed old man was killed by Zhuoan, the elders on the 9th floor all came out. Waves of terrifying divine senses wrapped around Zhuoan like a hurricane, as if they wanted to suppress Zhuoan. Unfortunately, Zhuoan's divine soul was extremely powerful. These divine senses were instantly annihilated by him. Furthermore, Zhuoan used the soul-slaying technique to heavily injure the divine souls of several elders. Whoosh! Whoosh! In just an instant, more than 20 figures rushed out of the 9th floor of the Chenkuan Tower and surrounded Zhuoan in the middle. The leader was an old man in a white robe. This old man had white hair and a youthful complexion. His aura was extremely powerful. Virtual Sky 8th Step. Chapter 2164. Noisy Supreme Elder. The 20 or so figures that flew out from the top floor bowed respectfully to the white-robed old man who was their leader. The white-robed elder nodded and waved his sleeve. Suddenly, the Thunder Fire Sword and Blood Immortal Sword that were wreaking havoc on the 8th floor of the Chenkuan Tower were stopped by a terrifying force. Zhuoan slashed out with his sword and immediately split open the stagnant force. The Thunder Fire Sword and Blood Immortal Sword circled around him. Hey! I didn't expect you to be so powerful even though your cultivation is only at the 5th step of the Void Sky realm. Who are you? The white-robed elder's eyes narrowed as he asked in a deep voice. Sword Dragon slashes the sky. Zhuoan didn't waste any time. He held the king's sword in his right hand and slashed out. The sword chi soared into the sky and transformed into a huge dragon that charged towards the white-robed elder. The white-robed elder narrowed his eyes but didn't care. Although the sword was powerful, he didn't think it was powerful. The white-robed elder waved his sleeve and a powerful divine power burst out, easily blocking the huge dragon formed by the sword chi. However, the moment the white-robed elder blocked the huge dragon, the dragon's aura continued to rise. The purple color on the huge dragon's body became more and more intense, and the dragon's strength became more and more powerful. Zhuoan used the power of Tao will to increase the power of the sword dragon slashes the sky by 7 times. The white-robed elder was caught off guard by the sudden change. Boom! The purple dragon slashes the sky suddenly exploded. The terrifying purple energy was like rain falling in all directions. Even the white-robed elder was shocked by the energy that burst out in an instant. Rumble. The power of the purple dragon grew stronger and stronger. It was like a high-pressure gas that exploded in an instant. It exploded inside the Chenkuan Tower. Then, the Chenkuan Tower trembled violently and finally collapsed. On the other hand, the plaza around the Universe Tower was in an uproar. All the disciples stared blankly at the collapsed Universe Tower. However, they quickly realized that something big had happened to the Universe Tower. At this moment, the aftermath of the Chenkuan Tower's shattering spread out, and the surrounding square began to collapse and shatter. Then, most of the disciples in the square with low cultivation were blown to smithereens by the terrifying aftermath. Run! On the plaza, miserable cries and sounds of people fleeing for their lives could be heard without end. All the cultivators scattered like monkeys when the tree fell, and they all left the Universe Pagoda as they looked at the Universe Pagoda that had already been completely reduced to ruins and the surrounding plaza in fear. Within the shattered Chenkuan tower, a gigantic purple dragon leaped out. In front of the gigantic dragon's head, the white-robed old man kept forming hand seals. Lighter rays appeared in front of the white-robed old man, blocking the purple dragon's attack. Behind the white-robed elder were the remaining 20-odd elders of Chenkuan sect. Someone is attacking the universe pagoda, and is fighting with the elder on the top floor of the universe pagoda. Who is it? When they saw the scene of the purple dragon, many of the disciples that had escaped from the plaza revealed frightened gazes. They raised their heads to look at the purple dragon, and soon after, they saw an ordinary-looking young man. This young man was wearing the uniform of a servant disciple, and he looked ordinary. However, such an ordinary-looking servant disciple was actually standing on the head of the purple dragon with a sword in his hand, suppressing the white-robed old man. Servant disciple? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Why is this servant disciple so sick? I know this person. Isn't he Huang Xinli? I remember that this guy was dumped by his girlfriend a few days ago, and he was depressed. How did he suddenly become so strong after not seeing him for a few days? So it's Huang Xinli. Isn't he the trash of the servant disciples? The one who got along really badly with the servant disciples. Many of the disciples were discussing, and many of them recognized Zhuowen as Huang Xinli. In an inconspicuous corner of the crowd, LV Shen's beautiful eyes saw everything. Her jade-like hand covered her mouth as she looked at the scene in disbelief. How can he be so strong? Am I dreaming? LV Shen muttered softly, her beautiful eyes filled with disbelief. She was too familiar with Huang Xinli, and they were childhood friends. If Huang Xinli was really so strong, it was impossible for her not to know. However, the scene in front of her made her believe that Huang Xinli, who she had once abandoned, was fighting against the Chenkuan sect supreme elder, and he wasn't at a disadvantage. Rumble. The white-robed old man snorted coldly, and his right hand quickly pointed out. Instantly, the light array started to spin rapidly, and a terrifying suction force appeared. Soon after, the purple dragon was sucked into the light array. How dare you! Not only did you kill in the universe pagoda, you even destroyed it. Today, I will kill you. The white-robed old man's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He took a step forward and rushed towards Zhuowen. At the same time, more than 20 figures behind the white-robed old man rushed out, ready to surround Zhuowen. These 20 figures were the upper echelons of the Chenkuan sect. Among them, there were 3 7th-step Void Skymasters, and many 6th-step Void Skymasters. It had to be said that the upper echelons of the Chenkuan sect were much stronger than those of High Heaven sect and Dark Illusion sect. At least, this lineup was stronger than the Dark Illusion sect. Zhuowen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He had come here to cause havoc in the Chenkuan sect, and he wasn't going to back down. Zhuowen immediately called out Di Ling, Zhong Ziqing, and the other 4. At the same time, he released the black-robed Zhuowen, and the black-robed Zhuowen directly revealed his true body, Devour. The huge Devour's body was like a mountain, covering the sky and suppressing the world. In an instant, it enveloped the entire Chenkuan sect. Devour faced the sky and roared. Invisible sound waves swept out like a gale, sweeping in all directions. The expressions of the white-robed old man and the others changed slightly. Di Ling, come with me to kill that old man. Zhong Ziqing, the 4 of you will deal with those 20 people. Zhuowen jumped on Devour's head and ordered the king spirit. The king spirit nodded, holding the halberd in his hand. His body moved like a shuttle, fighting the old man in the white robe. The 20 people behind the white-robed old man were blocked by Zhong Ziqing and the other 3. The murderous intent in Zhuowen's eyes grew stronger. Although the white-robed old man was also an 8th-step Void Skymaster, there was a big gap between him and the old ancestors of the 10 great sects. He should have just broken through not long ago. Now, the white-robed old man was fighting Di Ling, and he was at a disadvantage. If Devour helped him, the white-robed old man would die. At this moment, the white-robed old man became more and more frightened. The emperor in front of him was also an 8th-step Void Skymaster, and his strength was much stronger than his. What made the white-robed old man even more afraid was the terrifying giant beast behind Di Ling. The pressure that the giant beast gave him was even more terrifying than Di Ling's. Peng. Chapter 2165. Devouring the Heaven and Earth Sect. Extreme Thunder and Extreme Fire. Is this the thunder and fire true God? The white-robed old man's pupils shrank. However, the crisis of life and death made him raise both of his hands. His palms emitted a blazing white light as he tried to block the claw. Boom! Devour's claw was powerful. As the claw slammed down, the thunder and fire energies fused together and exploded. The resulting power was terrifying, as if the air had been compressed. The white-robed old man's eyes were filled with rage. He felt as if all the bones in his body had shattered at this moment. His eyes were bloodshot, and he looked extremely terrifying. Poochie. The white-robed old man didn't hold on for long. He spat out a mouthful of blood as his face turned pale. The thunder and fire energies had seeped into his body, destroying his internal functions. Zhuowen stood silently on Devour's head, looking down at the white-robed old man. His eyes were cold and ruthless. Who are you? Why did you come to my Heaven and Earth Sect to make trouble? Do you know the consequences of offending my Heaven and Earth Sect? If Lord Chen Changsheng wasn't here, you wouldn't be able to do whatever you want, the white-robed old man roared. Zhuowen said indifferently, I know that Chen Changsheng isn't here, so I came to make trouble. That old man brought a lot of people to Dongyu to capture me. He even wanted to kill me. Do you think I'll just let it go? The white-robed old man's eyes changed. He said in a low voice, You are Zhuowen? Didn't you say that the ancient teleportation formation in Dongyu was damaged? How did you come to Shiyu? King Spirit. Zhuowen didn't want to waste time talking nonsense with the white-robed old man. He called out, and the King Spirit, who was not far away, dashed over and thrust his halberd at the white-robed old man's vitals. The white-robed old man could only watch the King Spirit's attack. He couldn't resist because he was trying his best to resist Devour's attack. The King Spirit's halberd pierced through the white-robed old man's vitals. The white-robed old man's eyes widened in anger, and his whole body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. The virtual sky bridge inside his body was destroyed. As soon as the old man in the white robe died, more than 20 elders were defeated. With Devour and King Spirit's help, even if 3 of them were at Void Sky 7 steps, they couldn't do anything. Zhuowen had killed them all. The battle at the Chenkuan Tower had long attracted the attention of the entire Chenkuan sect. One by one, the Chenkuan sect disciples rushed over and surrounded the Chenkuan Tower. Not good. The Supreme Elder has been killed. The other elders have also been killed. Who are these people? How can they be so terrifying? After the white-robed old man and the other elders were killed, the surrounding Chenkuan sect disciples fell silent. In fact, some of them were even trembling in fear, having lost their will to fight. Even the Supreme Elder and the other upper echelons had been killed. How could they, the ordinary disciples, be a match for this person? Zhuowen stood on Devour's head and rose into the sky. He looked down at the Chenkuan sect disciples and said indifferently, I didn't want to kill more people. If you don't want to die, open the Chenkuan sect's protective array now and swear to leave the Chenkuan sect. Otherwise, the sword in my hand won't be polite. As soon as he finished speaking, all the Chenkuan sect disciples fell silent. Soon, some of the disciples began to tremble and swear to leave the Chenkuan sect. More and more disciples followed suit. At the same time, Zhuowen noticed that the Chenkuan sect's protective array had been opened. All the disciples who have left the Chenkuan sect now, leave the Chenkuan sect. If you stay here, don't blame me for not warning you when the Chenkuan sect is destroyed, Zhuowen said again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. As soon as Zhuowen finished speaking, the disciples who knew what was good for them took out their flying divine items and left the Chenkuan sect. Of course, there were some stubborn disciples who refused to leave the Chenkuan sect. However, they were in the minority. Most of them were killed by Zhong Zhiqing and the other 3. Master, how do you plan to deal with the Chenkuan sect? Di Ling came to Zhuowen's side and asked curiously. Devour. Zhuowen said something that confused Di Ling. Then, Devour leaped into the sky above the Chenkuan sect. The heaven and earth sect was spread across 3 huge star continents, covering a vast area. Devour opened his mouth and a black whirlpool appeared in his mouth. A terrifying suction force came from the black whirlpool. Devour spat out the black whirlpool and it floated above the Chenkuan sect. The black whirlpool grew bigger and bigger until it almost covered the entire 3 continents. The king spirit was shocked to find that the 3 planets were being sucked into the black vortex, and eventually, they were disappearing. Is this Devour's power? It's so powerful. Di Ling looked at the colossal object in awe. The continents were huge, much bigger than life planets. They could be compared to galaxies. The Chenkuan sect was made up of 3 continents. It was obvious how huge it was. However, Devour had easily devoured it. The power of the Chenkuan sect was incredible. Zhuowen naturally swallowed the Chenkuan sect into Devour's inner world. Because the Chenkuan sect was so big, the resources inside were definitely richer than the Dark Mirage sect and High Heaven sect. If he slowly collected the resources inside, it would take him a lot of time. By then, he wouldn't have time to go to the Void Peak or the Demon Pearl sect. It's time to go to the Void Peak. Zhuowen stood on Devour's head and said to Di Ling and the others. Then, he flew toward the Void Peak. The Void Peak was also in West Yu. It wasn't too far from the Chenkuan sect. Zhuowen only took 5 days to reach the Void Peak. As the name suggested, the Void Peak was a huge mountain. The mountain was huge, especially the bottom of the mountain. The area was comparable to the star continent. Moreover, the mountain had layers and layers. Each layer had an extreme space. It could be said that the Void Peak stood in the starry sky. Looking from afar, it was definitely a strange sight. Master, do we attack the Void Peak directly or do we use the Chenkuan sect's method? Di Ling asked. The same method. Zhuowen smiled slyly. 2 months later, Chen Changxing and Fu Yuz finally arrived in West Yu. Brother Fu, the Chenkuan sect is closer. How about we go there first? In the cabin, Chen Changxing turned to look at Fu Yuz. He sounded a little anxious. Okay. Anyway, our sects are on the way. Let's go to the Chenkuan sect first. Fu Yuz nodded and directed the flying ship to move forward quickly. When Fu Yuz stopped the flying ship according to the coordinates given by Chen Changxing, they were all stunned. There was no Chenkuan sect on the old site. It was empty. There was nothing left, not even gravel. Brother Chen, where is the Chenkuan sect? Fu Yuz looked at Chen Changxing in confusion. Chapter 2166. Devil Pearl Sect. Chen Changxing searched the old site of Cosmic Sect inside and out, but he still could not find any trace of Cosmic Sect. An ominous premonition arose in his heart. Brother Chen, could it be that Zhuowen's doing? Fu Yuz asked with a slight frown. Chen Changxing forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and looked at Fu Yuz, saying, Brother Fu, let's go take a look at Void Rush Peak. It's not far from Cosmic Sect. Fu Yuz's eyes revealed a worried expression. He nodded, and the 2 of them boarded the flying ship and left. When the flying ship arrived at the coordinates of Void Rush Peak, they discovered that the place where Void Rush Peak was located was also empty. There was no trace of Void Rush Peak. Fu Yuz's expression also changed. He looked at Chen Changxing and discovered that the latter was also looking at him. The 2 of them both sensed that something was wrong. There's a flying ship passing by here. Let's go and ask. Chen Changxing suddenly said. Fu Yuz nodded and immediately ordered the higher-ups of Void Rush Peak in the flying ship to intercept the flying ship. There were only 5 people in the flying ship, 3 men and 2 women. Their cultivations were not high. At this moment, they walked down shakily and looked at Fu Yuz, Chen Changxing, and the others with fearful eyes. They could sense that the group before them was very powerful, so they did not dare to resist. Let me ask you, isn't this Void Rush Peak? Where's Void Rush Peak? Why is it gone? Fu Yuz took a deep breath and asked coldly. The man in the lead of the 5 revealed a strange expression and said, "Senior, could it be that you don't know what happened at Voidrush Peak?" What happened? Fu Yu's had a bad premonition. More than a month ago, a young man led a huge beast and 5 experts to destroy Voidrush Peak. It said that even Voidrush Peak's encampment was swallowed into the stomach of that huge beast. Moreover, it's not just the emptiness peak. The Chenkuan sect was also swallowed by the giant beast. Most of the disciples of the 2 sects have already left their respective sects. In Shiyu, the Chenkuan sect and the emptiness peak exist in name only. The man in the lead explained cautiously, but Fu Yu's and Chen Chongqing's expressions became extremely unsightly. They did not need to guess. They knew that the young man with the huge beast was the Zhuoan they were looking for Zhuoan Peak. However, what they didn't understand was that before they left, they had already activated the defensive formation. How did Zhuoan break through their defensive formation so quickly and destroy their sect's foundation? Of course, if they knew that Zhuoan had snuck into the sect to achieve a breakthrough, they would be so angry that they would vomit blood. Where is that youth now? Chen Chongqing asked murderously. The man in the lead shook his head and said, "I don't know about that. I only know that the young man vanished after devouring the Voidwave Peak. I don't know exactly where he went. Zhuowen, you and I are irreconcilable. Since you dared to destroy my sect, I will exterminate your entire clan. I will not let off anyone related to you." Chen Chongqing was truly furious. He, who had always been calm, involuntarily roared towards the sky, unable to control his emotions. The 5 people who were intercepted were all trembling. Chen Chongqing's roar contained a terrifying sound wave power. The 5 of them could not bear it and were bleeding from their 7 orifices. Brother Chen, Yang Zhonghui sent a message. She said that Zhuoan Peak is now in the demonic Pearl sect and is attacking it. She asked for our support, Fu Yu suddenly said. Chen Chongqing said, "Let's go. Let's go to Southern Universe. I must kill this boy with my own hands." Fu Yu's naturally had no objections. The coldness in his eyes was extremely dense. Zhuowen had annihilated his Void Rush Peak. This enmity was absolutely irreconcilable. Fu Yu's could not wait for Zhuowen to die without a burial ground. Chen Chongqing and Fu Yu's did not hesitate in the slightest. They steered the flying ship and disappeared, leaving behind the 5 people who were bleeding from their 7 orifices due to the sound wave. They stared blankly at the flying ship in the distance. At the border of Western Universe, Chen Chongqing and Fu Yu's led their respective high-level cultivators to the center of a gravel area. Fortunately, this old man hid an ancient teleportation array here. Otherwise, if we wanted to go to Southern Universe Demonic Pearl Sect, we would have to use a flying ship. It would be a waste of time. Chen Chongqing swept to the side of a gravel that was 10 feet in size. With a wave of his sleeve, the gravel collapsed inch by inch. A blazing white light burst out from it, and then a complicated array was revealed. It was the ancient teleportation array. That little bastard thought that he had destroyed the ancient teleportation array of Western Universe. He probably didn't expect that I still had a trick up my sleeve. This time, we must take him down completely. Chen Chongqing sneered. Fu Yu's eyes flashed. "Brother Chen, where do you plan to teleport to this time? Directly into the demonic Pearl sect?" Chen Chongqing nodded. "Of course. Didn't Yang Zhonghui say that Zhuowen is forcefully destroying the defensive array of the demonic Pearl sect? We'll teleport into the demonic Pearl sect and wait for an opportunity to take action. When the time comes, we'll catch him off guard and kill Zhuowen." Fu Yu's nodded repeatedly. Clearly, he felt that Chen Chongqing's plan was not bad. "I'm going to activate the array. You all go in." After saying that, Chen Chongqing formed a seal with both hands. The ancient teleportation array immediately burst out with light. Fu Yu's and the others naturally hurried into the array. The white light flashed, and then Chen Chongqing's group disappeared into the white light. At the encampment of the Southern Universe Demonic Pearl sect, invisible ripples spread out outside the huge sect, as if countless gravel had fallen onto the surface of the water. This was the defensive array of the demonic Pearl sect. Outside the sect, an extremely huge beast was madly attacking the demonic Pearl sect. The seemingly sturdy defensive array of the demonic Pearl sect was on the verge of collapse under the concentrated attacks of the huge beast, as if it would collapse at any moment. Inside the demonic Pearl sect, all the disciples were ready to go. They looked at this scene nervously, and the atmosphere was extremely solemn. The ancestor of the demonic Pearl sect, Yang Zhonghui, and the sect master, Yang Muqiu, were both present. Because Zhuowen had wasted a lot of time dealing with the Heaven and Earth sect and Void Rush Peak, when he was on his way to Southern Universe, he just happened to run into Yang Zhonghui and the others who were rushing back. It was inevitable that the two of them would fight. Yang Zhonghui's side was weaker than Chen Changsheng's and Fu Yu's strength. Although Yang Zhonghui had a secondary heaven-breaking divine artifact, Zhuowen also had the supreme Shining Sun Blade. With Old Man Ruthless strength and the supreme Shining Sun Blade, Yang Zhonghui was naturally no match for him. Zhuowen's side also had an 8 steps Void Sky expert like Di Ling. In that clash, Yang Zhonghui's side suffered heavy losses. Many of their higher-ups died. Yang Zhonghui was defeated and retreated into the demonic Pearl sect's defensive array. She held on for dear life. For a while, Zhuowen could not do anything to the demonic Pearl sect's defensive array. After all, the demonic Pearl sect's defensive array was presided over by an 8 steps Void Sky elder like Yang Zhonghui, so it was much stronger than usual. Chapter 2167. Union Forefather, Zhuowen's doppelganger is too terrifying. I'm afraid the defensive array won't last long. Yang Muqiu came to Yang Zhonghui's side, her face pale. Yang Zhonghui's eyes were gloomy, but soon, she looked relieved. Yang Muqiu noticed the change in Yang Zhonghui's expression and asked, "Forefather, what's wrong?" Yang Zhonghui said, "Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's have brought their people here. They will be teleported to the demonic Pearl sect soon. You go and help them. Remember, don't make a fuss. This time, they want to kill that little bastard Zhuowen." Joy was revealed in Yang Muqiu's beautiful eyes. She hurriedly nodded and quietly left. Outside the demonic Pearl sect, Zhuowen stood on Devour's head with King Spirit, Old Man Wu Qing, and the others behind him. "Huh! What did Yang Muqiu say to Yang Zhonghui?" "Then, he left," King Spirit said, squinting. Zhuowen also noticed Yang Muqiu's small movements. He frowned slightly and vaguely felt that something was wrong. "Old Man Wu Qing, when I left Westyu, are you sure all the ancient teleportation arrays in Westyu were destroyed?" Zhuowen asked in a low voice. Old Man Wu Qing's eyes twinkled. He said uncertainly, "They should have been destroyed. Of course, if someone deliberately hid the ancient teleportation arrays, I can't do anything about it." On the other hand, Zhuowen's mood sank to the bottom of the valley. The ominous premonition in his heart grew even stronger. He said, "Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's should have already arrived in Shiyu and discovered that their respective sects were destroyed by me. With their personalities, they will definitely turn the world upside down to seek revenge. Yang Zhonghui is like a cornered beast. She will ask them for help. If the ancient teleportation arrays in Westyu are destroyed, it will take them at least a month to get to Southyu from Westyu. I have plenty of time, but," Old Man Wu Qing said, "are you worried that Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu still have a backup plan?" "Yes, that's what I'm afraid of. If those two really have something up their sleeves, then they can use the ancient teleportation array to immediately teleport to Nanyu, or even directly into the Magic Pearl sect," Zhuowen said in a deep voice. "If there is such a possibility, do you have any good strategies to deal with it? Or should we give up on attacking the demonic Pearl sect and leave immediately?" Old Man Wu Qing asked. Zhuowen shook his head. "It's impossible for me to give up on attacking the demonic Pearl sect. I must destroy it. Even if Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's come, they won't be able to stop me. The only way now is to use bait. Among the few of us, only my doppelganger and you have the power to destroy the Devil Pearl sect. But I think Chen Changsheng and the others definitely won't let me go, so when the time comes, I won't even have a chance to act." With that said, Zhuoan set up a shielding array formation outside. Then, Zhuoan pushed with his right hand, and divine power poured out, condensing into a dwarf old man in front of him. He was exactly the same as old man Wu Qing. The void sky 5 steps had the ability to create things, but of course, it could only create very simple creatures. Although Zhuoan had used his sacred power to create a dwarf old man like old man Wu Qing, this old man had no soul or consciousness. He was like a puppet, and his aura was even worse than a mortal's. Kid, the puppet you created can't fool them at all. It's like a dead person. Old man Wu Qing shook his head. Zhuoan was not annoyed at all. They won't pay attention to you deliberately. Moreover, I cultivate the shapeless all life, so I can use it to simulate your aura. As long as they don't get too close and deliberately investigate you, they won't be able to tell that it's fake. With that, Zhuoan used the shapeless all life to give the puppet beside him a powerful aura. Moreover, this aura was almost exactly the same as old man Wu Qing's. However, if one looked carefully, they would be able to find the flaws in the puppet's aura. You hide first. If there really is a special situation, I'll leave the matter of destroying the demonic pearl sect to you. If there isn't, we'll directly destroy the demonic pearl sect in one go, Zhuoan said. Old man Wu Qing nodded and immediately formed seals with both hands. An invisible ripple spread out from old man Wu Qing's body, and the old man disappeared into the starry sky. To be more precise, this old man had merged his aura with the starry sky through a formation technique. There was no distinction between the two. Ordinary cultivators would find it difficult to detect the difference between the two. Crack. After old man Wu Qing hid in the starry sky, the demonic pearl sect's great formation finally began to collapse. However, Zhuoan smelled something unusual. This was because he found that there was no surprise or worry in Yang Zhonghui's eyes. Instead, they were filled with confidence. Yang Zhonghui, die. Although Zhuoan sensed something amiss, he still controlled Devour to send out a palm strike. Lightning and fire intertwined on his palm, and all the cultivators in the demonic pearl sect could feel the terrifying power that could destroy the world. Yang Zhonghui's beautiful eyes turned solemn. She formed a hand seal and flicked her finger. An embroidery needle shot out. Although the embroidery needle was not eye-catching, Zhuoan dared not look down on it. It was a heaven-breaking divine artifact. Rumble. The embroidery needle collided with the lightning and fire energy. Immediately after, countless red threads burst out from the embroidery needle, forming a net to entangle Devour's right palm. The red threads were extremely strange. Even the terrifying lightning and fire energy could not cut through the red threads. It could not even break them. Attack. At the same time, Yang Zhonghui suddenly shouted. Next, two auras that were even more terrifying than Yang Zhonghui's erupted from the depths of the demonic pearl sect. Soon after, two imposing figures flew over. Zhuoan was naturally not unfamiliar with these two figures. They were naturally Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's. Little bastard, you're dead. How dare you destroy my cosmic sect? I'll make sure you die without a burial place. Chen Changsheng's eyes were filled with hatred. Although Fu Yu's did not say anything, the killing intent in his eyes was not any weaker than Chen Changsheng's. Zhuoan, you didn't expect Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's to come to the demonic pearl sect, did you? Yang Zhonghui controlled the embroidery needle, her beautiful eyes filled with mockery. The embroidery needle was extremely fast. It quickly twined around Devour's right hand. The red threads bound his right hand tightly, making it hard for him to move. Moreover, these red threads were extremely tough. Even the lightning and fire energy could not break them. It was extremely strange and terrifying. Swoosh, swoosh. Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's were extremely fast. They arrived before Devour in the blink of an eye. Chen Changsheng held the long sword with the pattern, slashing at Devour's glabella. Fu Yu's wielded the meteor hammer, mercilessly beating Devour while he was down. The attacks of the two heaven-breaking divine artifacts combined were extremely terrifying. Even with Devour's tough body, he didn't dare to resist these two terrifying attacks. Chapter 2168. Starry Sky Fault. Although Zhuowen was decisive enough to retreat quickly, Chen Changsheng and Chen Changsheng didn't hold back. However, Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's didn't restrain their power. The two attacks were too terrifying. Although they hadn't reached Devour yet, the shockwaves of their attacks were like tornadoes hitting Devour. Devour howled in pain. The scales on his chest shattered, and blood gushed out. At the same time, Zhuowen, Di Ling, and the others vomited blood, their faces pale. Apparently, their injuries weren't light. "Get into the spirit ring," Zhuowen roared. With a wave of his sleeve, he put Devour, Di Ling, and the others into the spirit ring. Then, he flapped his torch dragon wings and flew away. "This kid is so decisive. Did he know we were here to ambush him?" Fu Yu's murmured, looking at the fleeing figure in surprise. "Chase. This kid can't escape from our palms." Chen Changsheng didn't waste his breath. Instead, he quickly chased after Zhuowen. Fu Yu's and Yang Zhonghui glanced at each other before following closely behind. Faster, faster. Zhuowen's divine sense detected Chen Changsheng's group of three chasing after him, and his expression changed slightly. These three were all experts of the 8 steps void sky, so their speed was naturally not slow. Especially Chen Changsheng, he had a secret technique that could actually make the three behind him work together, instantly increasing their speed. Originally, there was still some distance between Zhuowen and the three of them, but now, the distance was shrinking. If they were ordinary void sky 8 steps experts, Zhuowen wouldn't be afraid. However, the three behind him were stronger than Yu Wuxi and Ling Binbing. They were experts at the same level as Magatama from Heavenly Demon Island. But that wasn't all. All three of them possessed secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts. There was no need to explain how powerful these secondary heaven-crushing divine artifacts were. Even old Wu Qing didn't dare to fight against the three of them, let alone Zhuowen. Facing the three of them head-on was no different from courting death for Zhuowen. "They're really hot on my heels." Zhuowen paid attention to Chen Changsheng's group as they approached him. At the same time, he madly used his Dao Will on the torch dragon wings on his back. Under the amplification of the sevenfold Dao Will, the 9 dragons on the torch dragon wings were dyed purple, and each of them was as large as a dragon. The 9 enormous purple dragons hovered in the void behind Zhuowen. It was a spectacular sight. At the same time, Zhuowen's speed was raised to the extreme. However, even with the torch dragon wings and the amplification from the 7th level Dao insight, Zhuowen was still unable to shake off Chen Changsheng and the others. 3 days later, Zhuowen was still fleeing while Chen Changsheng and the other two were still in pursuit. The distance between the two sides had already shrunk to around 100 zhong. The distance between them was simply too short for experts of their level. Behind them, Yang Zhonghui's beautiful face suddenly changed. Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's also noticed the change in Yang Zhonghui's expression, and Chen Changsheng couldn't help but ask, "Junior sister Yang, what's wrong?" Yang Zhonghui's pretty face was gloomy as she said, "The Devil Pearl sect was attacked. Now, the Devil Pearl sect has completely fallen. It's said that most of the sect's disciples are dead." "What? Who is attacking the demonic Pearl sect?" Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu asked in unison. "It's the dwarf old man beside that little bastard Zhuowen. That old man's strength is very terrifying. It's said that he's an expert at the peak of the 8th step of the void sky realm," Yang Zhonghui said in a deep voice. "That's impossible. That dwarf old man has always been with that Zhuowen. Previously, he was also kept in that Zhuowen's spirit ring. We chased after him for 3 days and 3 nights. That Zhuowen simply didn't have the time to release that dwarf old man. Even if he did release him, there's no way we wouldn't know about it," Chen Changsheng immediately refuted. However, Yang Zhonghui was extremely irritated as she said, "The problem now is that my Devil Pearl sect has already been destroyed. Forgive me for not being able to accompany the two of you." After saying this, Yang Zhonghui decisively left Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's, no longer chasing after Zhuowen. Instead, she turned around and rushed towards the Devil Pearl sect. Right now, Yang Zhonghui was very worried about the safety of the sect's disciples. If the Devil Pearl sect really was destroyed because of this, Then she would become a sinner for all eternity. Brother Chen, what do we do? Fu Yu's asked with a frown. Chase. Continue chasing, we've almost caught up to that little bastard. We can't just let him go like this, Chen Changsheng said viciously. Although the two of them were also rather worried about the higher-ups they brought, compared to this, they were more concerned about getting rid of this scourge, Zhuowen, in advance. These two old fellows really are chasing me to the death. Zhuowen, who was fleeing in front, naturally discovered that Yang Zhonghui had left. He knew that Yang Zhonghui should have known that the Devil Pearl sect had already been destroyed by Old Man Wu Qing. Originally, in Zhuowen's plan, Old Man Wu Qing had destroyed the Devil Pearl sect, so naturally, he wouldn't let go of the higher-ups that Fu Yu's and Chen Changsheng brought. Zhuowen thought that these two old fellows would also return to the Devil Pearl sect like Yang Zhonghui because they were worried about the people he brought. At that time, he would naturally be able to escape with his life. But now, he realized that he was wrong. Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's killing intent towards him far surpassed their worry for their own people. What should I do now? I'm afraid that it won't be long before these two old fellows catch up to me. Zhuowen frowned slightly. If Old Man Wu Qing was by his side now, he might not necessarily be afraid of Fu Yu's and Chen Changsheng, these two old fellows. But the problem now was that Old Man Wu Qing wasn't by his side. Although Devour had completely recovered to his peak state by relying on the heavenly domain Starry Sky essence, with Devour's strength, he could at most block one of Chen Changsheng and Fu Yu's. As for the other person, Zhuowen's original body was definitely no match for him, and the King Spirit and Zhong Ziqing's group were definitely no match for him either. There's a starry sky fault in front of us. We actually came to a starry sky fault. Our luck is really extraordinary. Chen Changsheng exclaimed softly. His gaze noticed the spectacle hundreds of millions of miles in front of him, and the smile on the corner of his mouth grew wider. At the end of the line, there was no longer a starry sky, but a starry sky fault. The so-called starry sky fault meant that this starry sky was not complete, nor was it a seamless whole. Instead, it was like a piece of white paper that had many strips cut into it. The starry sky ahead was like a piece of white paper that had been cut into strips. The starry sky was separated layer by layer, and between the starry sky fault was a deep and bottomless darkness. No one knew what was in this darkness. But basically, any cultivator who entered the starry sky fault never came out. Zhuowen also noticed the starry sky fault in front of him, and his expression changed greatly. He naturally knew about the starry sky fault. It was the most terrifying place in the southern universe and the entire starfield. Inside the starry sky fault was an incomparably deep abyss of darkness. It was said that cultivators who entered the starry sky fault never came out. Therefore, it was said that if anyone accidentally entered the starry sky fault, they would die without a doubt. Fu Yu's was surprised by Devour's fighting capacity, but he wasn't worried. He knew that as long as he could kill the six of them, he could join hands with Chen Changsheng to take down Devour easily. While the battle was in full swing, they didn't notice that a pair of giant scarlet eyes had appeared in the space vault behind them. The pair of scarlet eyes scanned the surroundings. Then, they fixed their attention on Devour, who was fighting Chen Changsheng. Their calm eyes revealed a gleam of surprise. Rumble. The scarlet eyes slowly disappeared into the fault in space. Then, the surrounding fault in space began to shatter and collapse. In the collapsed fault in space, a huge black spiral appeared. An unprecedented suction force came from the black spiral. The surrounding space fault was sucked in by the suction force, disappearing into the depths of the black spiral. Everyone who was originally fighting also noticed the black spiral that had inexplicably appeared at the center of the spatial fault. In particular, the terrifying suction force caused everyone to be horrified. What's going on? Why is the space fault changing? Chen Changsheng stopped moving, circulating his divine power to resist the suction force from the black spiral. The others didn't dare to move, either. They all tried to resist the suction force. The suction force was too intimidating. If they moved, they would be distracted and fall into the black spiral. Zhuowen's face changed. He found that the suction force from the black spiral in the center of the space vault was somewhat similar to Devour's devouring power. Moreover, Devour was using his devouring power to resist the suction force. He could even perform some simple actions in the suction force. Zhuowen observed that no matter if it was his body, the king spirit, Chen Changsheng, or Fu Yu's, they didn't dare to move because they were trying their best to resist the suction force from the black spiral. Once they moved, they would be distracted, and they would be sucked into the black spiral. At this moment, Chen Changsheng was trying his best to resist the suction force. He felt that the suction force was proportional to the amount of divine power he was using. In other words, the more divine power he used to resist, the stronger the suction force would be. Otherwise, with his divine power, he would be able to resist the suction force more easily than the king spirit and the others. However, the current situation was that he was affected by the suction force just like the king spirit and the others. That was why he had such a conjecture. Swoosh. While Chen Changsheng was analyzing the suction force, an ear-piercing noise came. Chen Changsheng saw Devour slowly moving toward him. Although he was moving slowly, he was coming. At the same time, Devour stretched out a giant claw and mercilessly slashed at Chen Changsheng's face. Be ****. How can you not be affected by the black spiral? Chen Changsheng couldn't help but curse. However, seeing the giant claw getting closer and closer, his heart raced. At this moment, he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. If he resisted, he would definitely be sucked into the spatial fault by the black spiral, but if he didn't resist, he would be struck directly by the claw. At that time, he would also be sucked into the black spiral due to his injuries. It could be said that whether he moved or not, the result would be the same. Fight! Chen Changsheng shouted. His left hand formed a sword seal and quickly pointed at the long sword in his hand. Then, countless sword lights burst out from the long sword. Layers of sword lights overlapped, forming a massive ancient totem that pounded on Devour's massive claw. Surprisingly, it shattered Devour's massive claw, causing blood to spurt out crazily. On the other hand, Devour was blown away by the terrifying force, flying toward the black spiral. Chen Changsheng's divine power poured out in an attempt to stabilize his body, but he found that it was of no use. Chapter 2170. Devour's eyes were dark and gloomy. He constantly used his devouring power to cover Devour's body, trying to stabilize his body. However, the momentum was too great. Even with Devour's devouring power, he couldn't stabilize his body. Devour roared. He opened his mouth and spat out a black vortex. The terrifying devouring power acted on his body, and at the moment Devour was about to be sucked into the black vortex, he was able to stop himself. Zhuowen heaved a sigh of relief. Devour's clone had almost been sucked into the space vault. If that happened, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, Chen Changsheng wasn't as lucky as Devour. He was almost dragged away by the black vortex. No matter how strong his god power was, he couldn't resist the suction. The moment Chen Changsheng was sucked into the black vortex, his eyes flashed crazily. The long sword in his right hand slashed his left palm, and his blood dyed the blade red. Swoosh! Then, he threw out the long sword. The red sword looked like a viper, darting toward Zhuowen's real body. This old man is really ruthless. Zhuowen's real body looked at the long sword, his pupils shrinking to the size of needles. He couldn't help but curse under his breath. Feeling helpless, he took out the supreme glorious sun saber. At this moment, Zhuowen only had the supreme glorious sun saber that could resist the sword. However, Zhuowen wasn't that confident because the supreme glorious sun blade wasn't a true sub-heaven-breaking divine artifact. It was a pseudo-heaven-breaking divine artifact that was between a void divine artifact and a sub-heaven-breaking divine artifact. Bang! Bang! Under the control of Zhuowen's soul consciousness, the supreme glorious sun saber covered many suns and attacked the long sword with patterns. The sword and the saber intertwined in just a blink of an eye. As Zhuowen was using his god power to control his body and his soul consciousness to control the supreme glorious sun saber, he wasn't affected by the black vortex. Of course, if the long sword could break through the supreme glorious sun saber, Zhuowen's balance would be broken instantly. Either he would be killed by the long sword or be swallowed by the black vortex. The 5 of you, hurry up and enter Devour's internal world. Zhuowen looked at the 5 king spirits with a dark expression. The 5 kings finally reacted. They didn't know when Devour was slowly moving toward them. Under the threat of the black spiral, only Devour could move freely. Of course, it was also because of his innate devouring power. The supreme glorious sun saber and the patterned longsword clashed more and more fiercely. Sparks flew like fireworks and were exceptionally dazzling. As expected of a secondary heaven-shattering divine artifact, the totem sword was actually able to firmly suppress the supreme glorious sun blade. Especially after the totem sword was dyed red by Chen Changsheng's blood, its power became even stronger. A small crack actually appeared on the surface of the supreme glorious sun blade. At this moment, Devour had come to Di Ling's team. He spat out a black vortex, taking the 5 of them into his body. Time to retreat. Zhuowen looked at the cracks on the supreme glorious sun saber's surface, his eyes filled with pain. He could feel that the supreme glorious sun saber's power was weakening. He was afraid that it wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. At this moment, Devour was slowly approaching Zhuowen. The moment Zhuowen was about to step into the devouring vortex, a thick sense of danger arose in Zhuowen's head. Behind Zhuowen, a meteor shower streaked across the sky. Amidst the meteor shower, a heavy meteor hammer was rapidly approaching. Zhuowen reacted quickly. He immediately retrieved the supreme glorious sun saber and placed it behind his back. Boom! Along with the meteor shower, the meteor hammer pounded on the supreme glorious sun saber. Cracks appeared on the surface of the saber as if it would break at any moment. After the meteor hammer, the patterned long sword slashed down. The scarlet sword light was like a strong wind, recklessly pouring down on the supreme glorious sun saber. Crack! Eventually, the supreme glorious sun saber couldn't endure the pincer attack of the patterned longsword and the meteor hammer. It shattered inch by inch, turning into powder. Zhuowen spat out a mouthful of blood from the impact. However, he reacted quickly enough and immediately entered the black vortex. Boom! Boom! However, the meteor hammer and the patterned longsword didn't intend to stop. They pounded on Devour's body. Devour could only raise both of his hands to shield his body. However, his eyes were filled with thick murderous aura as he coldly gazed at Fu Yu's not far from him. Perhaps Fu Yu's had noticed Devour's murderous aura, but he didn't mind. He sneered, "You'd better get your ass into the space vault. It's considered taking revenge for Brother Chen, the Heaven and Earth sect, and the Void Rising Peak." Fu Yu sneered. He was still a distance away from Devour. Now, he was interfering with Devour from a distance. Of course, he wanted to send Devour into the space vault. Of course, Zhuowen could see Fu Yu's intention. Although he wanted to counterattack Fu Yu's, Devour's wounds were severe. Although he had the heavenly star pith, he needed a large amount of it. Zhuowen didn't have much heavenly domain star essence left, and he couldn't bear Devour squandering. If he wasn't in a desperate situation, Zhuowen didn't plan to use the heavenly domain star essence. However, Devour was in an awkward situation. The 2 secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons had forced him to retreat, and he had to retreat to the black vortex behind him. Although Devour had tried to use his devouring power to resist, he couldn't do anything because of the interference from the 2 secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons. "Get your ass in there." Fu Yu's laughed, looking at Devour, who was retreating, his eyes filled with ridicule. Roar. However, Fu Yu's face stiffened shortly. A terrifying beast's roar arose from deep inside the space vault. The roar was full of anger and impatience. At the same time, the suction force from the black vortex in the space vault increased several times in just a blink of an eye. Fu Yu's, who had finally stabilized his body with great difficulty, did not pay attention for a moment and flew straight towards the black spiral. No matter how much Fu Yu struggled, he could only slow down the speed of his body as he flew backwards. The meteor hammer and the patterned longsword were also affected by the terrifying suction force. They shivered and flew backward toward the black vortex, which relieved Devour's pressure. However, although the pressure from the two secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons was reduced, the suction force from the black vortex was too intimidating. Devour couldn't resist it, and his devouring power could only help him move his limbs a little bit. Grab the two secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons. Zhuowen's eyes fell on the meteor hammer and the patterned longsword that were affected by the black vortex. Devour roared, his right claw grabbing the two secondary heaven-breaking divine weapons. Chapter 2171. Trapped. The suction force of this black spiral is too intimidating. It's almost impossible to get rid of it. Zhuowen sighed. Then, his eyes fell on Fu Yu's, who was struggling to get closer to the black spiral. Murderous aura surged in Zhuowen's eyes. Since he couldn't get away from the black spiral, Zhuowen had to collect some debts. Lightning fire prison, Devour roared. His body exploded with the two terrifying energies of extreme fire and extreme lightning. Lightning and fire intertwined, shooting toward Fu Yu's, who was still struggling. It was Devour's strongest attack. He had almost released all of his lightning and fire energy. After releasing the lightning and fire energy, Devour couldn't resist the suction force of the black spiral anymore. He was swallowed up. Ah, you little bastard. Bastard. Before Fu Yu's could react, he was wrapped up by the lightning and fire energy. The thunderfire energies were like the sharpest swords, mercilessly piercing into Fu Yu's acupuncture points. They continued to expand, like chains in a prison, locking Fu Yu's entire body. Moreover, the lightning and fire energy formed a lightning fence around Fu Yu's, forming an incomparably huge lightning and fire prison. If it were any other time, although the lightning and fire energy was tough to deal with, Fu Yu's could easily destroy it. But now, all of his god power was resisting the suction force of the black spiral. He didn't have the energy to resist this energy. The lightning and fire energy wreaked havoc in Fu Yu's body. He felt as if his internal organs were about to explode. Zhuowen, you little bastard, you'd better remember this. Fu Yu's faced the sky and roared. He didn't care about the suction force of the black spiral anymore. The god power in his body surged, expelling the lightning and fire energy wreaking havoc in his body. However, it was too late for Fu Yu's to expel the energy. More than 70% of his body was badly burned. Fu Yu's didn't even have time to heal before the black spiral swallowed him. When Fu Yu's disappeared into the black spiral slowly dissipated and the fault in space returned to its original state. If the adventurers of the southern universe saw this, they would be absolutely stunned. This was the first time such a strange black spiral had appeared in the space fault. 3 days later, a dwarf old man stepped through the air and stopped outside the spatial rift. He frowned and said, "Zhuobrat's presence has completely vanished here." The dwarf old man's gaze fell on the interior of the spatial fault. His right hand continued to deduce, but in the end, he shook his head and said, "This is really unexpected. This kid has played with fire too much. He's even gotten himself into trouble. It'll be hard for me to explain myself when I return to the far west." This dwarf old man was naturally Old Man Wu Qing. Ever since Zhuowen lured Chen Changxing and the others away, Old Man Wu Qing had emerged from the shielding formation. According to the agreement, the old man began to deal with the Devil Pearl sect. The ancestor of the demonic Pearl sect was not present, and the protective formation had been broken. There was no Void Heaven 8th stage expert overseeing the sect. Who in the demonic Pearl sect could stop a peak Void Heaven 8th stage expert like Old Man Wu Qing? It could be said that when Old Man Wu Qing took action, it was a one-sided slaughter. The disciples of the demonic Pearl sect either died or fled. Old Man Wu Qing had basically killed all the upper echelons of the sect. Of course, Old Man Wu Qing did not let the upper echelons of the sect that Chen Changxing and Fu Yu's had brought with them go. Originally, Chen Changxing and the others should have retreated after such a huge matter had happened in the demonic Pearl sect. However, Old Man Wu Qing discovered that only young Zhonghui had returned. At that time, he knew that the situation was bad. After Old Man Wu Qing and Yang Zhonghui fought several hundred rounds, Yang Zhonghui was heavily injured and fled. Old Man Wu Qing did not continue to pursue. Instead, he followed Zhuowen's presence to the spatial fault. I originally wanted to ask for some compensation, but it seems that's not quite possible now, Old Man Wu Qing said regretfully. Although Old Man Wu Qing was not too clear about the spatial fault, his intuition as an expert told him that the spatial fault was definitely not a good place. He could not possibly enter it for Zhuowen. Forget it, forget it. Let's return to the far west first. Old Man Wu Qing stayed here for a while. In the end, he decided to leave the star field and return to the far west. The destruction of the Heaven and Earth sect, the void-piercing peak, and the demonic pearl sect had completely spread throughout the star field. It had almost become something that everyone knew. Zhuowen's name was like thunder, spreading throughout the entire Great Brahma domain. Many cultivators knew that this kid had destroyed the High Heaven sect and the Dark Illusion sect in Eastern Universe, then went to Western Universe to destroy the Heaven and Earth sect and the void-piercing peak. In the end, he arrived at the Southern Universe demonic pearl sect. Under the combined efforts of Chen Changsheng and the other two ancestors, he had destroyed the demonic pearl sect. It was also during the battle of the Southern Universe demonic pearl sect that Zhuowen disappeared. Chen Changsheng, Fu Yuz, and Yang Zhonghui, the three ancestors who had once worked together to deal with Zhuowen, had Yang Zhonghui severely injured by an old dwarf and escaped. As for Chen Changsheng and Fu Yuz, just like Zhuowen, they had vanished without a trace, without the slightest bit of news. However, the most widespread rumor was that Chen Changsheng and Fu Yuz had fallen into a fault in space with Zhuowen. It was unknown whether they were dead or alive. This rumor was said to have been personally witnessed by a cultivator who had passed by the fault in space. That cultivator had even recorded everything that had happened in the fault in space with a crystal ball, so many cultivators believed this rumor. Eastern Universe, Heavenly Demon Island. Magatama stood at the top of the Demon Tower and looked in the direction of Southern Universe. He frowned slightly and said, "Moji, is this rumor reliable? Did Zhuo Xiaoyu really fall into a fault in space?" Moji took out a crystal ball and respectfully presented it, saying, "Ancestor, this is a recording of what happened. It doesn't seem to be fake." Magatama took the crystal ball and silently examined it. After a long silence, he finally sighed softly. The heavens are truly jealous of geniuses. Zhuo Xiaoyu's talent was extraordinary. You would have definitely been a formidable figure in the future. What a pity. Northern Universe Half Moon Hall, on the balcony of an elegant palace, a beautiful woman in a moon-white dress held a crystal ball in her hand. Her beautiful eyes revealed a complicated expression. "Sect Master, I don't believe that Zhuowen is dead." The beautiful woman slowly turned around and looked at the cold and elegant woman behind her. Her beautiful eyes were filled with determination. This beautiful woman was naturally the #1 genius of Half Moon Hall, Tong Chimei. Back then, at the 18th level of the trial ground, she had reached the top of the stairway with Zhuowen's help. She had always been grateful to Zhuowen. The cold and elegant woman was the sect master of Half Moon Hall, Waning Moon. Waning Moon shook her head, saying, "Chimei, the fault in space is very terrifying. Even an expert of the 8 steps of Void Heaven would find it difficult to leave if they fell into a fault in space, let alone Zhuowen. This Zhuowen is truly too impulsive. The way he does things is also a bit domineering. Although I am very surprised that this child was actually able to possess such a powerful lineup in a short dozen years, he is still too impulsive." Tong Chimei retorted, "Sect Master, if you were alone, could you have been like Brother Zhuo and come back after a dozen years and uprooted the Dark Illusion sect, High Heaven sect, Heaven and Earth sect, Void Cleansing Peak, and Demon Pearl sect?" You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.